when the world has softened and the demands of the day have loosened their grip, something else begins to emerge. Not the noise of your to-do list, not the echo of other people's opinions, but a quieter current beneath it all. A story, the story you tell about who you are and what is possible for you. You may not hear it as sentences, you feel it as a tone, as background music, as the subtle pull that makes you say yes when you mean no, that makes you shrink when you long to step forward, that makes you expect disappointment even before life has answered you. This story lives beneath every decision, every reaction, every emotion. It colors how you meet fear, how you interpret pain, how you use or abandon your power of choice. Most of the time it runs on its own. You do not sit down and repeat, "I am not enough," or "I will always be alone," yet the body reacts as if these lines were carved in stone. This story moves like background music in a distant room, shaping your mood, shaping your pace, shaping your sense of control, even when you do not know the words. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these old lines appear and fade. Tonight is an invitation to notice them, to listen with clarity and kindness. This is the time to listen, not to judge yourself for the story you inherited from family, culture, and old wounds, but to finally hear it clearly enough to see that it is only that, a story. Psychology calls it narrative identity, and it quietly predicts your peace, your resilience, your capacity to heal. Taoist sages and Stoic philosophers pointed to the same truth in different language. You are not fixed, and your past is not your prison. You were never promised ease, but you were given this breath, this moment, this ability to step back and see. When you become aware of the story running your life, you begin to return to yourself. You begin to separate what you can control from what you cannot. You can control the meaning you give to events, the way you speak to yourself in the dark, the next small step you choose. You cannot control the past, other people, or every outcome. Let it fall away. This session will move slowly, a meditative exploration, blending Taoist softness with Stoic steadiness. You will be guided through gentle reflections, simple examples, and practical steps that you can use while lying down, eyes closed, body ready for sleep. No effort, no strain, just awareness as a quiet practice. As you rest, you will learn to see your old story, to loosen its hold, and to begin writing a truer one, word by word, breath by breath. Stay with this. Guard it fiercely. The life you wake into tomorrow will still be the same in many ways, but the story meeting, it does not have to be, and that changes everything. So now, as you lie here, held by the dark and the quiet, bring to mind the simplest question. When you think of yourself, what are the first words that appear? Do not search for the perfect answer. Just notice the very first labels that rise on their own. Successful, failing, lovable, unlovable, strong, broken, too much, not enough. They appear quickly, like headlines you have seen 1,000 times. They feel familiar. They feel heavy. They feel like the truth. Pause here. Feel your breath move in and out, slow and steady, as if it were washing those words with every exhale. In this moment, you are not here to fix them or argue with them. You are here to see them, to see how fast they come, to see how automatic they are, to see that they arrive before you even have a conscious choice. The Stoics would call these first thoughts impressions, not commands, not verdicts, just marks left on the mind by habit, by memory, by fear and pain. A thought is an impression, not an order. You can watch it arise without bowing to it. This is the time to listen, not to react, not to obey. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these thoughts appear, linger for a moment, and then, if you let them, pass away. The label is not the person. The story is not the self. You were never promised ease, but you were given this power to decide which words you will hold on to and which you will let fall away. Consider where these labels came from. A parent who was harsh with their own wounds. A culture that worships achievement and shames rest. A past mistake repeated in your mind until it became a name you answered to. Cognitive science calls this narrative identity, the story you repeat about who you are. The more often you repeat it, the more solid it feels. But repetition is not proof. It is only practice. So tonight you begin a different practice, gently, without force. Imagine a slow river moving through a quiet valley. See the surface, dark and calm, reflecting the night sky. In your hand, you hold one harsh description of yourself, as if it were written on a small leaf. I am a failure. I am unlovable. I am weak. Choose one. Now, in your mind, place that leaf on the water. Watch how the river receives it without judgment, without interest, without resistance. The current carries it forward. You do not have to push it away. You do not have to pull it back. You only watch. Breath after breath, you watch. Another label arises, another leaf, another gentle release into the moving water. You are not erasing your past. You are remembering what you can control, not the first thought, but the second, and the third, and the way you respond. You are learning to return to yourself. Stay with this image a little longer, because in the next part of this journey, you will begin to choose new words and live them. You are not beginning from a blank page. Long before you chose any words for yourself, other people were already writing on you. As a child, you listened before you could question. You absorbed the tone in your mother's voice, the tension in your father's silence, the way teachers looked at you, the way other children reacted when you entered a room. You took in their praise and their disappointment, their fear and their fatigue, and your mind did what minds do. It tried to make sense of it. It turned scattered moments into a story about who you are. Maybe you became the responsible one, the child who never caused trouble, who anticipated every need, who cleaned up the messes no one else would see. Or you were the difficult one, the problem, the one adults sighed about in the next room when they thought you could not hear. Perhaps you were the quiet one, praised for not needing much, or the one who always fixes things, or the one who never gets it right. These phrases may not have been spoken out loud, yet you felt them. You wore them. This is the time to listen beneath the surface of your own mind. When a familiar sentence appears, when you hear, I always ruin things, or no one really wants me around, pause. Ask yourself, whose voice is this really? Is it your present, adult perception, or is it an echo of a tired parent, an overwhelmed teacher, a culture that rewarded you for shrinking or performing? From a Taoist view, the self is not a statue, carved once and forever. It is a stream, always moving, always shaped by the land it passes through. Family, school, culture, early pain, early praise, all of it has flowed into you. But the water that arrived first does not own the river. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these thoughts, these old lines and labels, appear and pass away. You were never promised ease. You were born into a web of expectations and unfinished stories, and much of what you carry is not your fault. It is not a failure of character that you believed what you were told about yourself, before you had the power to choose. In this moment, your power begins, not to erase the past, but to see it with clarity and let it fall away where it no longer serves your nature. So you return to yourself and you ask, gently, again and again, whose belief is this? Whose standard am I trying to meet? Whose disappointment am I still bracing for? This is what you can control now. The quiet investigation, the refusal to repeat a story just because it is familiar. In the next part of this practice, you will learn how to answer those old voices with new, truthful words, and how to guard it fiercely when the past tries to speak for you again. Culture has its own voice. It does not shout like a parent in anger. It whispers like background music you stopped noticing years ago. Yet it is there, in the shows you watch, the headlines you scroll past, the faces that are praised, and the ones that are ignored. From the time you were small, you were taught another equation of worth. Productivity equals value. You are valuable when you are producing, improving, achieving. Rest is suspicious. Slowness is guilt. Have you felt that? The quiet shame when you are still, as if your mere existence in this moment is not enough. This is not your nature speaking. This is a story the culture wrote and slipped into your mind. Another story. Youth equals beauty. As if your worth peaks at a certain age and then begins to decline like a chart on a screen. Wrinkles become failure. Softness becomes defeat. You begin to measure your face against images that have been edited into something no human can sustain. In that comparison, you suffer more in imagination than in reality. You forget that you are the space in which life is unfolding, not a surface to be endlessly corrected. There is also the story that constant positivity equals strength. No tears, no doubts, no visible fear. You are told that to be strong is to be unbothered, always confident, always grateful. So when grief comes, or anger, or exhaustion, you do not only feel the pain itself, you also feel the added weight of believing you are failing by feeling it. Yet you are not your thoughts. You are not your moods. You are the one who can watch them rise and fall and choose your response. Many of the moments you have named failure are not evidence that you are defective. They are friction. Friction between your deeper nature and the stories your environment insisted were true. You are tired, but the culture says, keep going. You are grieving, but the culture says, move on. You are called inward, but the culture says, stay visible. No wonder something in you feels off. No wonder peace seems far. Through a Stoic lens, you begin to separate what you can control from what you cannot. You cannot control the trends of your time, the ideals of your society, the praise or blame of strangers. You can control your judgments about them. You can control whether you swallow every story whole or pause, breathe, and examine. This is the time to listen for that pause. When you see clearly, you do not need to chase every standard the world invents. You can let it fall away, one expectation at a time, and return to yourself. You were never promised ease, but you were given this power of perception. Soon, you will practice how to lay down the stories that never belong to you at all, and how to write, word by quiet word, a different story rooted in your own values and in this present breath. Now, as the night holds you and the breath slows, you can begin to see something more quietly radical. You can begin to see that the stories about you are not you. They arise, they pass, they return in new forms, but they are only visitors in your mind. Imagine your awareness as a wide, open sky. Thoughts move through it like weather. Some nights, the sky is crowded with storm clouds, heavy with fear, regret, old pain. Other nights, It is clear and calm, but the Stoics would remind you, the weather is not the sky, the anger is not the sky, the story is not the sky. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which they appear, change, and fade. This is the time to listen. A thought arrives. I always fail. Another follows. I'm not enough. In Stoic language, these are impressions, arriving uninvited, like strangers knocking at your door. You cannot fully control who knocks. You can control who you let in. You can control what you assent to. The story appears on the page of your mind, but you decide whether to sign your name beneath it. The Taoists would paint it differently, but the truth is the same. They would say, you are like a river. The river does not cling to any wave. Each wave rises, curls, breaks, and is gone. Yet the river remains itself. In the same way, a painful story rises in you, a swell of, I always ruin things. No one really wants me. I will never change. You feel the surge. You feel the pull to build a dam around it, to hold it, replay it, prove it true. You do not have to. You can let it fall away. Tonight, you will practice this, gently, without force. Bring to mind one recurring story about yourself, not the whole biography, just a familiar sentence. Perhaps, I'm bad with people. Perhaps I'm weak. Perhaps I'm behind. Let it appear, as if written in front of you. See the words clearly. Feel what they usually do to your breath, your shoulders, your chest. Now, in silence, add 3 quiet words, just a pattern. I'm behind, just a pattern. I'm not enough, just a pattern. Notice the slight distance that opens when you name it this way. The story's still there, but now it is in front of you, not wrapped around you. You have created space. You have begun to return to yourself. Stay with that space for a few breaths. Guard it fiercely. This gap between you and the story is what you can control. It is where peace becomes possible, where a new, truer narrative can be born. In the next moments, you will learn how to meet that space with compassion and how to begin writing from it instead of from fear. Stay with that space for a moment longer. Feel how rare it is to be here, watching the mind instead of being pulled by it. This is the time to listen, not to the old story, to something quieter beneath it. From this stillness, you can see more clearly what has never been in your control. The past is fixed. Every word said, every mistake made, every door you walk through or walk past. You may revisit it in memory, but you cannot reach back and move a single stone. Other people's opinions also stand outside your power. Their judgments, their praise, their silence. The family you were born into, the culture you inherited, the roles you were handed before you could speak. All of this arrived without your consent. Even the first thoughts that appear in your mind are not fully yours. They rise out of habit, out of conditioning, out of fear and pain and old survival strategies. A thought arrives. I always fail. No one understands me. I will never change. You did not choose its arrival. It simply surfaced, like weather, like wind moving across an open field. But here is where the division appears. Here is what you can control. You can choose where to place your attention. You can decide which thoughts to feed, which stories to rehearse, which inner sentences you will repeat until they harden into identity. You can shape the meaning you assign to what has happened, and you can take small, present actions that align with that new meaning. Rewriting your story is not a demand to deny reality. It is not forced optimism or pretending that harm did not occur. You were never promised ease. Some chapters have been hard, unfair, even cruel. Stoic practice does not ask you to paint them in bright colors. It asks you to look at them with clarity, and then to ask, given that this happened, what is the most truthful, compassionate, and useful way to tell it now? Psychologists call this narrative identity. People who frame their hardships as training, as growth, as the beginning of a different path, tend to heal more fully. They sleep more deeply. They move with more peace. The Taoists would say you are not your thoughts. You are the space in which they rise and fall. From that space, you can gently say, "This story has guided me long enough. Let it fall away. Do not rush." This is a gradual practice, not a verdict passed in one night. You are not here to fix a lifetime in a single sitting. You are here to begin to return to yourself. One gentle breath, one kinder sentence, one small choice at a time. Tonight you will practice a new way of speaking to yourself. In the next section, you will be guided, phrase by phrase, into trying on a different story and feeling how it changes your body, your mind, and your sleep. And yet, as you begin this new practice, there is something important to see. You are not starting from a blank page. You have been carrying a story for years, perhaps for a lifetime, and without realizing it, you have been living as if it were law. Maybe your story sounds like this: "I'm not the kind of person who succeeds," or "I always ruin things," or "No one really understands me." One sentence, one quiet belief, and yet it colors every interaction, every breath, every choice. You walk into a room and your story walks in first. You speak to someone you love and your story speaks before you. When you hold the belief that you are not the one who succeeds, how do you move through the day? You see an opportunity, a role, a relationship that calls to you, and you feel that first spark of interest. Then the old sentence rises. You predict rejection. You imagine the future pain. You decide it is safer not to try. So you do not apply. You do not reach out. You do not begin. Not because you are incapable, but because your story has already decided the ending. When you hold the belief that you always ruin things, you may overwork, overgive, overcorrect. You stay late. You say yes to everything. You exhaust your body and your peace, all in an attempt to finally earn a sense of worth that never quite arrives. Or you avoid closeness altogether. You end relationships early, so you cannot be the one who breaks them later. The fear is not in the world. It is in the sentence you keep repeating to yourself. When you hold the belief that no one really understands you, invitations feel dangerous. A simple message, a quiet gathering, a small gesture of care becomes another chance to be unseen. So you decline. You tell yourself they did not truly want you there. You protect yourself from imagined rejection, and in doing so, you create the loneliness you feared. You are not your thoughts, but when you forget this, your thoughts quietly become your fate. This is not failure. This is nature. This is what happens when a story is never questioned, never updated, like following an old map in a landscape that has changed. The roads have moved, the bridges are new, the city has grown, but you keep tracing the same faded lines, wondering why you end up in the same dead ends, the same empty fields. The Stoics and the Taoists would both invite you to step back, to see that you are the space in which these stories appear, not the story itself. That is what you can control, not the past that wrote the first draft, but the attention you give it now, not the old map, but the choice to set it down. As you lie here, as your breath softens and your body grows heavy, this is the time to listen. Notice how it feels to carry these sentences. Notice the weight, the tightness, the familiar pull. And then, just for tonight, let it fall away. You do not need to fix the story by force. You do not need to argue with it or prove it wrong before you sleep. You were never promised ease, but you are promised this. Every night, your mind becomes more fluid, more open, more willing to release what no longer serves your nature. As you drift, your grip on these old maps can loosen, one finger at a time. Paths that were once invisible can begin to glow at the edges. New words can begin to form, gentle and true. In the next section, you will be guided into that new terrain. You will experiment with a truer, kinder story, spoken slowly enough that your waking mind and your sleeping mind can both hear it. For now, rest at the edge. Let your old story grow quiet. Your new one is already waiting. And here, at this quiet edge, another presence becomes easier to hear. Not the new story yet, but the voice that has been telling the old one for so long that you almost mistake it for your own. This is the time to listen, gently, without agreeing, without obeying, simply noticing. When that inner voice speaks, how does it sound? Not in theory, but in this moment, in the soft dark, when no one else is here. Is it harsh, sharp, impatient? Or is it, in a strange way, frightened? For most people, this voice is not a judge on a high seat, even if it pretends to be. It is more like a worried friend who learned some unhelpful lines long ago and has been repeating them ever since. Do not try. You will fail. Do not open up. You will be hurt. Stay small. Stay quiet. Stay safe. It sounds cruel, but at its root there is fear, not hatred. Cognitive science calls this narrative identity, the story you repeat about who you are. The Tao would call it a pattern in the water, not the water itself. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these lines appear, echo, and then, if you allow, fade. The voice keeps using the same lines because once they seemed to protect you. Once, lowering your expectations felt like control. You were never promised ease. Pain came, disappointment came, perhaps humiliation, rejection, failure. Your inner voice took notes. It decided that the safest path was to attack you before the world could, to predict loss before you could hope, to keep you from risking love, or change, or visibility. It believed that if it hurt you first, nothing out there could hurt you more. The Stoic would say, this is only a judgment, not a fact. The Taoist would add, do not wrestle with it, meet it with softness. Instead of fighting this voice, you can turn toward it. You can listen with curiosity. You can thank it, quietly, for trying to protect you. Then you can choose a different response, one grounded in reality, in compassion, in what you can control. Here is a simple practice. When a harsh thought appears, do not rush to argue with it. Feel your breath. Pause. Silently say, I hear you. Let it finish its old line. Then add with equal clarity, and here is a truer story. In that small gap, you return to yourself. In that gap, you begin to rewrite. You might say, I hear you. You say, I always fail. And here is a truer story. I have failed, and I have learned, and I am still allowed to try. Or, I hear you. You say no one cares. And here is a truer story. Some have turned away, and some have stayed, and I can choose to reach again. Let the old sentence stand, but do not end the paragraph there. This is not denial, it is precision. It is the practice of adding what was missing: context, growth, possibility. Each time you do this, you loosen the old knot by a single thread. You let it fall away, not by force, but by telling the whole truth. Soon, you will be guided line by line through that truer story, so your mind can feel how it sounds, how it fits, how it brings peace instead of panic. For now, It is enough to recognize the old voice, to bow to its effort, and to know quietly that it no longer has to be in charge. You do not need a prettier story, you need a truer one. There is a difference. A forced, positive story feels thin, like a smile held too long. It denies the weight of your past, the reality of your fear, the real texture of your pain. A truthful story does not look away. It includes the nights you broke, the times you betrayed yourself, the seasons where nothing seemed to work. But it also includes what survived in you, what kept going. This is the time to listen, not to affirmations you do not believe, but to a more complete account of your own life. Notice how the old voice speaks in absolutes. I always fail. I'm broken. Nothing ever works out for me. These are not facts. They are conclusions, drawn in haste, repeated until they feel like nature. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these sentences appear, rise, and pass away. To rewrite your story is not to say, everything is fine. It is to say, here is what is actually here. I have failed at times, and I have also learned. I have been hurt, and I am still capable of love. Many things have gone wrong, and some things have quietly gone right. Feel the difference in your body as you hear that. One story locks you in, the other leaves a door open. The Stoics called this realism, not optimism, not pessimism, just the disciplined practice of seeing clearly. You were never promised ease. You were promised a mind that can choose how to see. When you say, I always fail, you surrender what you can control. When you say, I have struggled before, and I am still learning, you return to yourself. You come back to this moment, this breath, this next small choice. Cognitive science shows that the way you frame your past predicts how you meet your future. People who see hardship as training, as growth, sleep more peacefully, and recover more quickly. The Stoics discovered this long before the research. Each evening, they reviewed the day, not to attack themselves, not to polish their image, but to tell a clearer story. Here is where I fell short. Here is where I stayed true. Here is what I will try again tomorrow. Honest stories are stable, in a way positive fantasies can never be. When your story is, everything is great, one setback can shatter it. When your story is, life is difficult, and I am practicing courage, difficulty confirms the story and strengthens you. It can hold both your wounds and your potential without collapsing. This is how inner peace begins to form, slowly, quietly, beneath the noise. So as you move deeper into this practice, you will not be asked to deny your pain. You will be invited to name it with precision, and then to place it beside your strength, your persistence, your capacity to choose. From there, we can begin shaping a new narrative line by line, one that you can carry into tomorrow, without fear that it will break in your hands. And the best place to begin shaping that new narrative is here, in the softness of evening, when the world is finally willing to be quiet with you. The day is no longer pulling at your sleeves. The light is fading. Your body is already preparing to let go. This is the time to listen. Notice how different this moment feels from the rush of morning or the demands of midday. All day you move through roles, reactions, expectations, so quickly that the story of who you are gets written almost without your consent. At night, the pace changes, the edges blur, your breath slows, your muscles loosen, and there is a small, natural opening to look back without being swept away. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which they rise, move, and dissolve. The ancient Stoics understood this. They used the evening as a mirror. Seneca advised reviewing the day before sleep, asking where he had acted well where he had fallen short, and where he could choose differently tomorrow. Marcus Aurelius did the same in his private writings, not to condemn himself, but to return to his values with more clarity. This was not punishment, it was alignment. You were never promised ease. You were promised the chance to practice, to see your anger, your fear, your small acts of courage, and to say quietly, I can do better, and I have already done better than before. Imagine ending each day not with vague regret or restless distraction, but with a simple, honest conversation with yourself. What did I choose? What was in my control? Where did I hand that control away? Taoist wisdom adds another layer to this nighttime turning. In the language of the Tao, the day is active, bright, outward. The night is receptive, dark, inward. It invites softness, surrender, a gentle sinking back into your own nature. You do not have to force change here. You let it happen the way a river reshapes stone, slowly, patiently, through simple contact and quiet persistence. In this darkness, you are allowed to release the conversations you cannot redo, the outcomes you cannot fix, the roles you tried to play perfectly. Let it fall away, just for now. You return to yourself by loosening your grip on everything you cannot move. What you can control becomes very small, very clear. Your next breath, your next interpretation, your next intention. Across psychology and philosophy, this evening review has always been a place where story meets reality. People who gently reframe their hardships as part of a growth story, sleep more deeply, heal more steadily, and wake with more peace. You are not erasing what happened. You are choosing how to hold it. In this session, you will be guided through a simple ritual you can repeat each night if it serves you. A brief reflection on the day, a quiet rewriting of one limiting line in your story, and one small, clear intention for tomorrow. No pressure, no perfection, only practice. In a moment, we will begin that process together, step by step, breath by breath. For now, just notice the night around you and the new page it is quietly opening. So now, as this new page opens, let your mind drift gently back through the one that has just closed. Not tomorrow, not the distant past, just this day. As if you were slowly turning the pages of a book you have just read. Begin at the morning and move, unhurried, toward this moment now. See yourself waking, moving through familiar rooms, stepping into conversations, tasks, small routines. You do not have to remember everything. Only let the scenes appear as they wish, like clouds passing in a quiet sky. This is the time to listen, not to argue with the day, not to rewrite it yet, but to notice the story that has been whispering underneath your actions. As you move through these scenes, pause when you meet a knot in your chest, a tightening in your throat, a heaviness behind the eyes, a moment when you felt small or tense, or ashamed or unworthy. Stay with just one at first. Ask, very softly, what was I telling myself about who I am in that moment? Not what they did, not what happened, what you told yourself you were. Perhaps you hear a familiar line. I always fail. I am too much. I am not enough. I will never change. Cognitive psychology calls this your narrative identity, the ongoing story you repeat about yourself. The Stoics and Taoists would say, you are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these sentences appear and fade. The story is not your nature. It is only a pattern the mind has practiced. Let another moment surface. Maybe a brief silence in a conversation where you felt awkward. Maybe a mistake at work that kept replaying. Maybe a memory that rose at night and brought old fear or pain with it. Again, ask, what was I telling myself about who I am? Notice the exact words if you can. Notice their tone. Notice how your body answered them. Do not turn this into a trial. You are not here to judge the day or condemn yourself. You are here to observe, to return to yourself as a quiet witness. This is a soft scan, not a verdict. A gentle review of what you can control, the stories you rehearse, the meanings you add, the way you speak to your own heart. If many scenes appear at once, let it fall away. You do not need to chase them. Choose just 1 or 2 moments that stand out, and let the rest dissolve into the background. Trust that they will be there if you ever need to look again. You were never promised ease, but you were given choice. Tonight, your only task is to see clearly. Hold these 1 or 2 moments lightly in your awareness, as if you were holding pages between your fingers, ready to turn. In the next part of this practice, you will begin to question the old lines written there, and gently write new ones that are truer, kinder, and more aligned with who you are becoming. Let those pages rest there for a moment. You do not need to tear them out. You only need to see what has been written. This is the time to listen, not to the loudest voice, not to the harshest judge, but to the quiet pattern beneath your thoughts. Tonight you will begin a simple practice. You will give these repeating stories gentle names, not diagnoses, not insults, names, a soft label that lets you recognize them when they appear, the way you would recognize an old play by its opening line. Perhaps one of your pages is the not enough story, the one that whispers, after almost everything you do, that it should have been more, better, different. Perhaps another is the always my fault story, where every conflict, every disappointment somehow becomes proof that you are the problem. Or the outsider story, the one that says you never quite belong, no matter where you stand. Notice how familiar they feel. They have been rehearsed for years. When you name a pattern, you bring it out of the fog. The mind moves from vague unease to clear perception. This is what you can control. You cannot control that a thought arises, or that an old memory flashes in the night, but you can learn to see the pattern and call it by its name. Naming is like turning on a small lamp in a dark room. The shadows are still there, but now you can walk without stumbling. It is important to understand this. Naming is not claiming. When you say, "This is the not enough story," you are not saying, "I am not enough." When you say, "This is the outsider story," you are not declaring, "I am destined to be alone." You are saying, "This is a script my mind has been rehearsing." You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these lines appear and disappear. In both Stoic and Taoist practice, this step back is sacred. The Stoics reviewed their day to see their judgments as events in the mind, not as their identity. The Taoists spoke of flowing with nature rather than clinging to fixed roles. You stand in that same place now, between reaction and awareness, between habit and choice. Guard it fiercely. So, try this with one story from today. Bring it to mind. Feel the familiar pull, the familiar pain. Then, quietly, in your own language, say inside, "This is just the old not enough story," or "This is just the old always my fault story." Repeat it once or twice, slowly, with your breath. Notice the small space that opens, the slight loosening of its grip. That space is peace beginning. You were never promised ease, but you were given this power to name, to see, to step back. In the next part of this practice, you will learn how to answer these old scripts, not with more attack, but with a truer voice that can finally let them fall away. So now, as those old scripts begin to loosen, you will not argue with them. You will breathe. You will create a quiet, living space between you and the story. Gently bring your attention to the simple movement of your breath. Feel the slow rise of your chest or your belly as you inhale, the soft, natural fall as you exhale. Nothing to fix, nothing to improve, just this steady rhythm, faithful, patient, always here. This is the time to listen, to the breath, to the body, to the silence underneath the words. Notice how the inhale arrives on its own. Notice how the exhale leaves on its own. You do not control each breath with force. You allow it, you accompany it. This is Taoist yielding in its simplest form. You are not pushing the river, you are letting it flow. The same can be true of your stories. As you breathe out, imagine that each exhale loosens the grip of the old narrative by a fraction, not ripped away, not torn out, just a slow, merciful unwinding, like fingers that have clutched a rope for years, gently releasing, one by one. The rope is still there, the story may still speak, but your hand is no longer cramped around it. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these thoughts, these memories, these judgments appear and fade. Cognitive psychology calls this decentering, the ability to see a thought as a thought, not as a command. The Taoists spoke of being like the sky, allowing clouds to pass without chasing or clinging. Different language, same truth. You are larger than the story. Feel again the rise and fall of the breath. When a familiar line appears in the mind, do not wrestle with it. Instead, softly name it. Here is the failure story. Here is the I am not enough story. Here is the I always mess it up story. Then, return to the breath. Inhale, exhale, name, return. This is your practice. Each time you notice and return, you are doing what you can control. You are training a new way of relating to fear, to pain, to memory. You are choosing not to drown in the river, but to sit on its bank and watch it pass. That is real control. Quiet, invisible, powerful. Guard it fiercely. This small gap, this gentle distance is the beginning of peace. And as this space grows, you will be ready for the next step, to speak back to these stories with a truer, kinder voice, and to begin writing the one you will live by next. Now that you have that small distance, you are ready for something gentler and also more powerful. Not an attack on your old story, not a denial of it, but a soft, deliberate rewrite in this moment. Rewriting does not mean erasing the past. The past is part of your nature now, woven into memory and muscle. You cannot control what has already happened, and you do not need to. What you can control is the language you use tonight, the way you describe yourself as you fall asleep, the way you frame your own heart. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these words appear, and you have a say in which ones you keep. So we will keep this simple, a gentle practice, a 3-part movement of the mind that you can repeat again and again until it becomes natural. First, you acknowledge the old story. Second, you state what is actually true right now. Third, you add a small, compassionate intention for how you wish to move forward. That is all. Not a grand reinvention, just a quiet, honest shift. The first step is respect. You do not need to fight the old sentence. You simply name it. You might notice, with clarity, the story I keep telling is that I always mess things up. You feel how that line lands in your body, how it tightens the breath, how it invites fear and shame. You see it as a habit, a groove, worn into the mind by repetition and pain. And then, you let it fall away, just for a moment, like placing a heavy bag down beside you. The second step is truth. Grounded in the present, you return to yourself as you are now, not as a summary of your entire life, You say, "Today I made a mistake." That is accurate. It is specific. It is contained. From there you can add, "I am learning from it." Feel the difference. One line condemns your whole being. The other describes a single event and your response. This is where peace begins, in precise, honest language. The third step is intention, but a very small one. Not a vow to become perfect, only a direction. You might say, "Tomorrow I will try one small thing differently." That is enough. Your nervous system can relax around that. Your mind can accept it. You were never promised ease, but you were given the power of choice, of tiny, repeated movements toward a truer life. This is the time to listen, you might tell yourself as you drift, to listen for kinder words, for more accurate stories, for the quiet voice that has been waiting beneath the noise. Because in the next part of this journey, we will walk through this 3-step rewrite together, slowly, with real examples. You will hear the old stories, feel them soften, and practice speaking new ones, line by line, as you fall into sleep. And practice speaking new ones, line by line, as you fall into sleep. As you lie here now, notice this simple fact. The story is still being written, even in this quiet, with your body heavy and your breath slow. Something in you is still choosing, still arranging meaning, still deciding what tonight will become in memory. This is the time to listen, not to the loud, familiar narration that has followed you for years, but to the softer one that appears only when the world is finally still. Can you feel that possibility, even faintly? That who you are is not sealed, not finished, not fixed in stone. Cognitive science calls this your narrative identity, the inner biography you repeat. Tao and Stoic practice both remind you that this biography is not your essence. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which every thought, every image, every old sentence about yourself rises and falls. So tonight, there is no demand to transform, only an invitation, a quiet commitment, not to wake up as a different person, but to return to yourself a little more often, to notice when the old script appears. I always fail. I am hard to love. I never change. To pause, to breathe, and to ask, is this completely true? Is this who I must be, or just a habit of speech? This is where what you can control becomes very small and very powerful. You cannot change the past you remember. You cannot erase the roles your family, your culture, your history handed you. But you can choose how you tell it tonight. You can let it fall away, line by line, and replace it with something more accurate, more humane, more aligned with your nature. Think of someone who once said, "I'm just bad with people." Night after night, they notice a shared laugh with a stranger, a kind message, a moment of real listening. Slowly, the story bends. I am learning to relate more openly and honestly. The events do not change. The meaning does. Peace follows the meaning. You were never promised ease. Change at this depth almost never arrives as a sudden revelation. It moves like the turning of a season, so gradual. You only recognize it when you look back and realize the light has shifted. Your work is not to force it. Your work is to guard it, fiercely, with small, steady choices of attention. So for tonight, keep it simple. Focus on what you can control in this moment. Your breath, your willingness to question harsh words, your openness to kinder ones. Let everything else wait for the morning. Let every unsolved problem, every unfinished chapter, rest outside the door of this night. And as you drift, offer yourself a soft inner promise. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic, just this quiet phrase, repeated gently in the mind that is learning to be your ally. My story is still unfolding, and I can meet it with honesty and compassion. Let these words move with your breath. Let them follow you into sleep, and trust that while you rest, the next line is already beginning to form. As you rest with that promise, notice something even quieter beneath it. Before the words appear, before any sentence about who you are forms, there is a soft, empty pause, like the breath you take before you speak, like the still surface of a lake before a single ripple touches it. Every judgment you make about yourself begins this way. I always fail. I am not enough. I will never change. Each one has a moment just before it rises, a tiny gap where nothing has been said yet. Have you ever felt that gap? Have you ever sensed the thin, clear instant between pure awareness and the story that tries to claim it? This is the time to listen. Gently, bring your attention to your breath. Feel the inhale arrive. Feel the exhale leave. Do not rush. As you breathe, do not follow the thoughts that pass through. Instead, notice that you are the space in which they appear. Thoughts move. Awareness stays. You are not your thoughts. Let your mind offer a quiet sentence about yourself, any familiar one. Perhaps, I am always anxious, or I am bad with people. See if you can watch it form, almost like seeing a cloud gather in the sky. There is a faint, wordless sense that comes first, then the phrase, then the emotion. Can you rest back, just a little, and feel the difference between the cloud and the sky that holds it? The Taoists called this resting back wu wei, effortless action, not forcing, not fighting, simply standing in your own nature and allowing what comes to come, what goes to go. The Stoics spoke of impressions arriving at the mind, and of your power to pause before you give assent. The impression is not yet a belief. The story is not yet you. In that pause, you return to yourself. This still point is what you can control, not which thoughts appear, not which memories surface in the dark, but whether you climb inside each story and wear it as your name. You are never promised ease. The mind will still send fear, pain, old images, but you can meet them as a watcher, as a host, who knows guests will leave when they are not constantly entertained. You do not have to force anything. You do not have to argue with every harsh sentence or rewrite your entire life tonight. Simply practice touching this quiet space more often. Feel a thought rise. Feel it peak. Feel it fall away. Let it fall away. Over time, repeated nights like this, the old stories soften. They lose their grip, not because you crushed them, but because you stopped feeding them your full belief. And as this softening begins, a question naturally appears. If you are not these stories, then who are you underneath them all? In the next moments, we will begin to explore that answer, not as an idea, but as a living experience you can feel from the inside. Underneath every story, there is something quieter, something that does not speak in words at all. This is the time to listen to that. The Stoics would say, what appears in your mind is an impression, not a command. Taoist sages would say, thoughts rise and fall like mist over a valley that does not move. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which they appear, change, and disappear, like weather in the sky. So imagine this now. Your awareness is a vast, open sky. It has always been here, from childhood until this moment, behind every season of your life. In this sky, there are clouds of memory, winds of fear, storms of anger, and gentle clearings of peace. They pass. They always pass. The sky does not chase them, and it does not cling. Bring to mind a recent harsh judgment about yourself. Perhaps it was, I always fail, or I am just not good enough, or no one really wants me. See if you can feel the weight of that sentence in your body, the tightening in the chest, the drop in the stomach, the familiar ache. Now, very gently, give it form. See it as a dark cloud bank on the horizon, or a sudden storm sweeping across your inner sky. Notice how intense weather can be. The rain can be heavy, the thunder loud, the wind sharp. In the same way, a thought can feel absolute when it arrives, but intensity does not equal truth. A storm is not the sky. A thought is not the self. You are not required to agree with every impression that crosses your mind. You have a choice. The Stoics trained this power of choice. An impression appears, and they pause before giving assent. Is this accurate? Is it useful? Is it in line with nature and with virtue? You can do the same. You can feel the surge of, "Oh, I am a failure," and quietly answer, "This is weather, not who I am." Say it inwardly now, with your next breath. This is weather, not who I am. Each time you repeat this, you return to yourself. You return to what you can control, not the arrival of the cloud, but your response to it. You do not fight the storm. You do not pretend the sky must always be clear. You simply stand as the sky itself, patient, steady, allowing what no longer serves you. You let it fall away. Identity begins to loosen here. You are not fixed as the wounded one, the disappointed one, the one who never gets it right. Those were labels given by passing storms. You were never promised ease, but you were given this inner sky. Guard it fiercely. In the next moments, we will explore how to live from this sky more often, and how to speak to yourself as someone who trusts the weather will always change. From this sky, something else becomes easier to notice. In the quiet, when the noise of the day fades, you can finally hear the voices that are not truly yours. This is the time to listen, not to the old story, but to the tone in which it is told. Feel how your breath moves in and out. Let your body grow heavier. And now, gently bring to mind one of your familiar inner criticisms, the one that says you always fail, or you are too much, or you will never change. Listen not just to the words, but to the rhythm, the sharpness, the weight. Does it actually sound like you? Often it does not. It sounds like someone else. A parent whose disappointment cut deeper than they understood. A teacher who believed fear was the only way to control a classroom. A group of peers who learned to protect themselves by attacking first. Culture itself, repeating its cold measurements of worth. Your mind records these voices. It replays them as if they were your own. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these voices appear, repeat, and fade. So when a harsh sentence rises, do not rush to believe it. Pause, as the Stoics taught. Ask, very simply, who does this sound like? Do not force an answer. Let it come on its own, the way a face slowly appears from shadow. You may recognize a phrase you have heard 100 times. You may feel the posture of the person, the room, the age you were. This recognition is not an attack on them. It is a return to yourself. It is the Taoist step backward, out of identification, into quiet seeing. The story loosens when you see whose mouth first formed its words. In psychology, they call this narrative identity. The way repeated stories shape your sense of self, your emotions, your choices. When your inner voice is filled with borrowed blame, fear grows, sleep breaks, peace disappears. When you begin to see hardship as training rather than proof of failure, the same memories become material for strength. The facts of your past do not change. The narrator does. So make a simple practice. When a borrowed voice appears, silently name it. Mother, father, teacher, culture. Then add, with calm firmness, thank you, but I will choose my own words now. Feel how that shifts the balance of control. Feel how your breath deepens as you step back into authorship. You were never promised ease, but you were given this power to notice, to name, to choose. Guard it fiercely. Let what is not yours fall away. Because once you begin to quiet the voices you borrowed, another voice begins to emerge, softer, unfamiliar, yet strangely true. In the next section, you will learn how to hear that voice more clearly and what to do when it does not sound gentle at all. So now, in this quiet, as that softer voice begins to emerge, you meet something else as well. The old scripts, the familiar lines, the stories that have followed you from childhood, from failure, from fear. They do not vanish just because you have seen through them once. They return. That is their nature. The Taoists would say, do not push the river. Do not fight what appears in the mind. When you attack a story, you feed it. When you argue with it, you wrap your attention around it. You rehearse its lines. You strengthen its grip. Resistance is still a form of clinging. The Stoics understood this too. What you stare at with anger, you keep alive. What you can look at with calm clarity, you can let fall away. So instead of wrestling with the story, you name it, gently, almost playfully. This is the time to listen. Which lines keep repeating in your inner theater? Perhaps there is a never enough story that tells you nothing you do, nothing you are, will satisfy. Perhaps there is a too late for me story that whispers that your chance has passed. Perhaps there is a I always ruin it story that turns every mistake into a verdict on your worth. Tonight, you practice a different kind of control. Not control over which thoughts appear, but over how you relate to them. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which they rise and fall. So choose 2 or 3 of these recurring self-narratives and give each one a simple title. Short, clear, even slightly kind. The never enough story. The always alone story. The I can't change story. Naming turns a fog into something you can see, turn toward, and if needed, turn away from. Now imagine the moment one of these scripts appears. You notice the familiar tightening in the chest, the familiar flood of images. Instead of tensing, you soften. You take one slow breath. You adopt the Taoist attitude of water, yielding but not conquered. And you say, inwardly, with calm curiosity, ah, this is the never enough story visiting again. I see you, and I don't have to follow you tonight. Feel the difference between that and, why am I like this? I have to stop thinking this way. One is a war inside your own mind. The other is a quiet boundary, a simple choice. This is what you can control. The tone of your response, the distance you allow, the permission you give yourself to return to yourself. You were never promised ease, especially not in the landscape of your own stories. But you were given this power to notice and to name without violence. In the next section, you will learn how to meet these old titles with new truths, how to gently rewrite the script while keeping your peace, so that each visiting story becomes not a sentence, but a doorway. You stand now at a quiet threshold. On one side, the old titles and familiar judgments. On the other, a simple, surprising power, the power to choose your next line. The Stoics drew a firm line through experience. On one side, what you can control. On the other, everything else. Your body will age. People will change. Outcomes will slip from your hands. Thoughts will appear on their own, sudden, uninvited, shaped by habit and history. But what happens after that first thought? That is where your freedom begins. You may not control the first sentence that rises in your mind. I failed again. No one cares. I will always be this way. These arrive like weather. They are conditioned, automatic, fast. You did not sit down and choose them, but you are not your thoughts. You are the space in which they appear, linger, and fade. And in that space, you can place a second line. This is the time to listen. The next time an old, sharp story appears, do not rush to agree with it. Do not rush to fight it either. Instead, practice a small pause. One breath, then another. Feel the air move in and out. Let the first thought be there without signing your name under it. In that pause, you ask a quiet question. What is mine to shape here? Not the past that triggered the thought, not the other person's opinion. Only this next line, only this response. That is all, yet it is not small. It is a turning. You might say to yourself, yes, I stumbled today, and I am learning. Or, part of me believes I am unlovable, and another part is willing to see that belief as just a story. Or simply, this hurts, and I can meet this pain with care. Notice how the second line does not erase the first. It does not pretend the wound is not there. It offers companionship instead of condemnation. Psychologists call this reframing. The Stoics called it judgment. Taoists might call it moving with, not against, your nature. 3 names for one movement. You step back, half a pace from the story, and give it a kinder, truer context. This is inner leadership. You are not tearing out pages or burning the book. You are staying in the conversation and gently guiding it, line by line, night after night. You guard it fiercely, not by force, but by returning again and again to this power of the next sentence. You were never promised ease in this practice. The old script will return. The first thought will still flare. But each time you place a different second line, you make a small, real change in who you take yourself to be. In the next section, you will learn how to weave these new lines into a living story so that your days begin to echo the quiet choices you make here in the dark. You were never promised ease in this practice, but you were promised something quieter and more faithful than effort, the way of nature itself. The Taoists point to water. It does not strain. It does not argue. It moves with the shape of the riverbed, and over time, it wears down stone. Your story can change like this, not with tension, with alignment. Most self-improvement teaches the opposite. Tight jaw, tight breath, tight will. You repeat, I must think differently. I must be different, as if you could wrestle your own mind into peace. Have you noticed what that does? The more you fight the old story, the more solid it feels. The more you insist, I am not this, the more your body braces, as if you are under attack from yourself. The Tao offers another way. You do not need to conquer the story. You can simply stop feeding it. Cognitive psychology shows that when you stop rehearsing a narrative, its emotional charge fades. The mind is plastic. It reshapes around what you repeat, what you return to, what you can control in this moment. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these lines appear, linger, and if you let them, dissolve. Imagine one of your oldest scripts. I always fail. I am hard to love. I am just bad with people. Instead of arguing with it, you notice it. That is all. You feel where it lands in your chest, your throat, your stomach, and then, very gently, you loosen. One slow breath, then another. Shoulders soften by a fraction. Jaw unlocks. Brow unknits. This is the time to listen. In that small opening, you ask a different question. Not, how do I fix this? But, what would feel a little more true and gentle right now? Not a perfect line. Not a heroic affirmation. Just a slight turn toward honesty and kindness. I'm learning to stay with difficulty. Some people have loved me well, I am practicing how to relate more openly. Each time you do this, you are walking with the current instead of against it. You are not forcing a new identity. You are allowing the old one to soften at the edges and drift. Research on narrative identity shows that people who frame hardship as growth experience more resilience and less despair. You are doing that in real time, breath by breath, word by word. This is your practice now. Notice the story. Breathe. Relax a little. Ask the gentle question. Let the harsh line fall away and replace it with something slightly truer, slightly kinder. Small, consistent shifts in tone and wording, repeated night after night, quietly reshape who you take yourself to be. Guard it fiercely, this power to choose your next sentence. In the next section, you will learn how to let these softer lines spread through your days, so that your actions, your relationships, and even your fears begin to echo this more truthful, more spacious story. Let us look more closely now at the voice that does not want you to change, the harsh narrator, the one that insists it already knows who you are, what you deserve, and how the story must end. Listen to how it speaks. It rarely uses gentle language. It prefers absolutes. Always, never, everyone, no one. It takes the vast, shifting complexity of your life and collapses it into a single, heavy judgment. I always fail. I never belong. No one really cares about me. One sentence, and your whole nature is reduced to a verdict, a life turned into a label. The Stoics would ask you to pause here, to notice that this is a judgment, not a fact. This is the time to listen, not to obey. When that sentence appears, you can meet it with a simple, quiet question. Is this completely true? Always, in every situation. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these lines appear, pass through, and fade. Consider a story like, I'm just bad with people. Is it true that in every interaction, with every person, in every season of your life, you have failed to connect? Or have there been small moments of warmth, of shared laughter, of being understood, that this narrator conveniently forgets? Cognitive psychology tells us that the story you repeat about yourself shapes your emotions and your choices. So you must examine the story. The Tao adds another doorway. Instead of wrestling with the sentence, you can step beside it. Ask, who would I be in this moment without clinging to this sentence about myself? Without the thought, I always fail. Who are you, right now, lying here, breathing? Perhaps just a human body, tired, a heart that has known pain and still wants peace, a mind practicing a new way of seeing. Notice how different this is from arguing with yourself. You are not trying to crush the harsh narrator. You are inviting it to loosen its grip, to let it fall away, even for a breath. This is what you can control, not the first thought that appears, but the second look you take at it, the calm, patient question you place beside it. Tonight, choose one painful story, not all of them, just one sentence that has followed you for years. When it arises, do not fight it and do not bow to it. Gently ask, is this completely true? Always? In every situation? Then, who would I be in this moment without clinging to this sentence? You are not here to win an argument. You are here to open a small window of doubt in an old narrative, to return to yourself. And as that window opens, even a fraction, something else becomes possible. Something the harsh voice has been trying to keep you from seeing. The shift from judgment to something quieter, something truer. Notice how the harsh voice loves big, sweeping claims. It says, I am a failure. I am unlovable. I am weak. These are not descriptions of a moment. They are verdicts on a whole life. They reach back into your past and forward into your future and try to seal everything under one heavy label. That is condemnation. That is a story pretending to be your nature. Description is different. Description stays close to the ground. It sounds like, I did not meet that goal today. I spoke harshly in that conversation. I avoided that difficult choice. Do you feel the difference in your body when you hear them? One attacks your identity. The other names an event. One says this is what you are. The other says this is what happened. Your nervous system knows the difference. When you say, I am a failure, the body prepares for exile, for lifelong danger, for a threat that never ends. Fear rises, the breath shortens, the mind loses clarity. But when you say, I missed a deadline this week, the threat becomes smaller, more specific, something you can meet with practice and intention. Precision is a kind of mercy. It is also a form of control. This is the time to listen. The next time you catch a condemning sentence, pause. Do not argue with it. Do not try to decorate it. First, remove the I am. Let it fall away. Then look at what remains. Failure, coward, mess. Ask, what actually happened, in real time, in one scene of my life? Rewrite it as a clear, time-bound description, anchored to a moment instead of your identity. I am a failure becomes, yesterday, I promised myself I would exercise, and I did not. I am bad with people becomes, at lunch today, I felt awkward and stayed quiet. I am broken becomes, right now, I am in pain, and I do not yet know how to move through it. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these sentences appear and dissolve. In this space, you can return to yourself. Choose one recent regret. Not the worst thing you have ever done, just something that still tugs at you when you try to sleep. See the old sentence that wraps around it. Maybe it says, I ruin everything. Maybe it says, I will never change. Gently set those words aside. Guard it fiercely, this willingness to see clearly. Now describe the scene as if you were a calm witness. Where were you? What did you do or not do? What did you learn? Perhaps you see? I interrupted my friend and did not really listen, and I learned how quickly I react when I feel insecure. That is already a different story. You were never promised ease, but you were given this, the power to tell the truth about a moment, and then to choose the next one. And from here, we can begin to shape a new story, not with perfection, but with the quiet honesty of each small description. So tonight, as you lie here, you can do more than replay the day. You can begin to reshape the way you speak to yourself about it. This is the time to listen, not to the old chorus of blame and defense, but to a quieter, clearer voice that has been waiting underneath. The ancient Stoics ended their days with a simple, serious practice. Before sleep, they would review the day, almost as if they were looking into a calm pool, asking where they had lived in harmony with their values and where they had turned away, not to torture themselves, to learn, to take responsibility for what they could control and to release what they could not. Seneca advised examining each action, each reaction, and asking, what was in my control here? My words, my tone, my effort, my honesty. In doing this, they were not rewriting the past. They were refining their character. They were choosing the next moment, even as the day ended. But where the Stoic gaze can become sharp, the Taoist gaze becomes soft. Taoism reminds you that you are not your thoughts, not your worst moment, not the role you played today. You are the space in which all of this rose and fell. So instead of harsh judgment, you practice gentle noticing. You see the wave without attacking the ocean. So we blend them, clear seeing and soft holding, precision and mercy. You look back, but you do not stab at yourself. You describe, you breathe, you let it fall away. To make this real, you will use 3 simple questions. You can whisper them in your mind as you rest, or write them down before you close your eyes. First, where did I live my true values today? Not in theory, but in one concrete moment. Perhaps you were afraid of conflict, yet you spoke with honesty. Perhaps you were tired, yet you listened fully to someone who needed you. Name it. Second, where did I follow an old story? Maybe you heard yourself say, "I am terrible with people," and you withdrew. Maybe you thought, "I always fail," and you did not even try. You do not need to explain or defend. Just notice. This is a practice of clarity, not punishment. Third, what small shift would feel more aligned tomorrow? Not a grand transformation, a single human choice. To pause before you react. To ask one sincere question instead of assuming. To place a hand on your heart when fear rises and return to yourself with one slow breath. Treat this as a quiet, kind conversation with yourself, never a performance or a test. You are not here to impress anyone. You are here to see, to learn, to guard it fiercely when you recognize even a small movement toward the person you are becoming. If you do this night after night, the research is clear. Your story changes, your resilience grows, your sleep deepens, and in the next section, we will carry this further, turning these nightly insights into small, living actions that reshape your days from within. Now we make that movement toward the person you are becoming very simple, very clear. We give it one sentence, not a slogan to impress anyone, a quiet line of truth that you can carry into sleep, into morning, into the hardest moments of your day. This is the time to listen, not to every passing thought or old accusation, but to something beneath them. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which stories appear, rise, and fade. Tonight, you will choose one sentence to plant in that space. A seed, nothing more and nothing less. Powerful change does not begin with a grand gesture. It often begins with a single, carefully chosen sentence repeated with sincerity over time. Cognitive science calls this shaping your narrative identity. The Stoics and Taoists would say it more simply. Return to yourself, again and again, with the same small truth, until it becomes your nature. You are not here to write a perfect affirmation. You are here to speak something that is already quietly true, or almost true, and gently hopeful. Not, "I am unshakable and fearless," when fear still grips your chest. More like, "I am learning to meet my fear with patience." Not, "I love myself completely," when that feels false. More like, "I am learning to treat myself with more kindness." Can you feel the difference? The first kind of sentence tightens the body, because some part of you knows it is a performance. The second kind softens you, because it honors where you are while pointing to where you are going. That softness is a sign of alignment, of honesty, of peace. So, let us search for your one true sentence. Let the breath slow, let the shoulders drop. Bring to mind a few possibilities and listen with your whole body. Perhaps, "I am someone who can begin again, even now." Perhaps, "I am slowly becoming more honest with myself." Perhaps, "I am willing to take one small, right step at a time." Say one of them silently. Notice your jaw, your throat, your chest, your stomach. Does the sentence create pressure, a subtle flinch, a sense of having to prove or perform? Or does it bring a small exhale, a sense of soft relief, as if something in you replies, "Yes, That, at least, is real. What you can control in this moment is not your entire future, not your past, not other people's opinions. You can control this one line you choose to repeat. Guard it fiercely. If a sentence makes you feel smaller, harsher, more ashamed, let it fall away. If it makes you feel a little more spacious, a little more honest, keep it. You were never promised ease, but you were given this power to choose the story you rehearse. In the next section, you will learn how to weave this one true sentence into your evenings and mornings until it quietly rewrites the way you live your days. So now we turn to repetition, to the quiet, patient way that a single sentence, returned to again and again, can reshape a life. Imagine a mountain stream. At first, the water meets hard stone and runs around it. Nothing seems to change. But year after year, drop after drop, the water carves a path. The rock yields. The shape of the land itself is altered. Your mind is that stone. Your repeated thoughts are that water. Every phrase you rehearse about yourself cuts a little groove. The brain does not ask whether the water is kind. It does not ask whether the sentence is true. It only notices what returns, what is repeated with fear, with shame, with tension in the chest, is etched just as deeply as what is repeated with intention, with clarity, with a soft breath. To your nervous system, rehearsal is rehearsal. This is why you must learn what you can control here and what you cannot. You cannot control that a thought appears. You can control whether you feed it. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which they rise and fall, the riverbed that can be carved in many directions. When you forget this, old phrases run like floodwater. I always fail. I push people away. I am too much. I am not enough. Each repetition deepens the channel until it feels like nature itself. This is the time to listen. What sentences about yourself have you rehearsed 10,000 times? Not just out loud, but under your breath, in the privacy of your mind, in the dark when you cannot sleep. I am behind. I ruin good things. No one really sees me. Can you feel how those grooves have guided your choices, your relationships, even the way you walk into a room? Psychologists call this a narrative identity, the story you tell about who you are. People who frame their hardships as growth, as training, report more peace, more resilience, less lingering pain. The Stoics knew this without the research. Their evening review was a daily chance to look again, to tell the story of the day in a cleaner, truer way. Tonight, you are doing the same. You have chosen one sentence that feels more honest, more spacious. Now you will let it become water. Gentle, steady, persistent water. In quiet moments, especially as you fall asleep, begin to rehearse it, not as a spell you must force, as a direction you return to, again and again, with each slow breath. Guard it fiercely. This one sentence is what you can control. Let the old phrases arise if they must, and then let it fall away. Do not wrestle. Do not argue. Just place your new sentence back in the stream of attention and let it run through you as you drift. If you do this night after night, the stone will change. The question is, how do you work with the days, with waking life, so that the new path you carve in sleep becomes the way you actually walk? You do not have to turn your life upside down tomorrow. You do not have to wake as a stranger in your own skin. Notice how often that fantasy appears. The dream of opening your eyes one morning with no fear, no doubt. A completely new story, already written for you. It is tempting because it feels clean, instant, painless. But you were never promised ease. Real change does not arrive like a lightning strike. It moves like water through stone, like a careful hand through a manuscript, crossing out one harsh sentence, softening one cruel line, adding one word of truth. Your story can change the way a book does through quiet editing, one sentence, one paragraph at a time. This is the time to listen. You are not here to perform a dramatic reinvention. You are here to see with clarity what you can control, the way you describe yourself, the way you interpret your past, the way you speak about your future. The old narrative may still appear, but you do not have to bow to it. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which those thoughts rise and fall, the editor who chooses which ones remain on the page. Both the Taoist and the Stoic would warn you about chasing emotional fireworks. The Tao speaks of the soft, the yielding, the water that wears down rock by simple persistence. The Stoics speak of steady practice, of the evening review, of returning each day to the same simple questions. What did I do? What did I feel? What will I choose next time? They do not ask you to burn your old life. They ask you to return to yourself again and again until the false layers grow thin and fall away. Cognitive science agrees with them more than you might expect. Researchers find that the way you narrate your hardships predicts your resilience more than the hardships themselves. When you frame pain as training, as growth, as preparation, your nervous system calms, your sleep deepens, your choices sharpen. The event does not change. The story around it does. So you do not need to rewrite everything tonight. In fact, you must not. For now, choose one place in your life, one situation, or one relationship where the old story has been especially harsh. Perhaps it is the way you speak about your body. Perhaps it's the way you describe your work, or your worth, or your ability to love. This week, there is your practice. In that single place, experiment with a slightly kinder story, one that is still honest, but not cruel. Guard it fiercely. When the old phrases return, notice them and let it fall away. Place the new sentence gently in your mind, as you did a moment ago, and breathe. What happens if you hold that one edit through a day, through a week, through a season? How might the rest of the book begin to shift? In the next moments, you will see how to choose that single place and how to begin. And yet, even as you choose that single place to edit, you know what happens. The old line does not vanish. It lingers. It waits. It returns when you are tired, when you are hurt, when you wake at 3 a.m. and the room feels heavier than your breath. Do not be surprised when it comes back. You spent years, perhaps decades, repeating that sentence about yourself. Of course it feels strong. Of course it feels familiar. The mind does not abandon its oldest pathways overnight, no matter how much clarity you touch in a quiet moment like this. Imagine again the water moving over stone. One storm does not carve a canyon. One new thought does not erase an old identity. The water of attention has been running in the same direction for so long that the rock bears a deep groove, a channel worn by repetition, by fear, by pain. When you shift the flow, it will still be drawn again and again toward that carved out path. This is not failure. This is physics. This is nature. The stone does not resist you. It simply remembers what has passed over it. In the same way, your nervous system, your habits, your reflexes remember the old story. They will offer it to you automatically, especially when you are stressed or alone. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these grooves appear, and through which new rivers can still be drawn. So when the old words rise, meet them with a simple, steady reply. Of course, this feels strong. I practiced this story for years, and I'm practicing something different now. Let that be your quiet declaration. Not a fight, not an argument, just a clear statement of what you can control in this moment. Your response, your direction, your next small choice. You might hear, "I always ruin things. I never change. I am just this way." Notice the pull, the familiar weight of those lines. Then, with one gentle breath, answer, "I am learning. I am changing. I am allowed to practice." You were never promised ease, only the opportunity to meet difficulty with awareness. This is that opportunity. Each return of the old story is another chance to return to yourself, another chance to practice the new sentence, the new stance, the new way of seeing. Progress in this work is not measured by how rarely the old groove appears, but by how quickly, how kindly you choose again when it does. This is the time to listen. The next time the old narrative tightens around you, will you tighten with it, or will you soften, breathe, and turn the water a few degrees? In the coming moments, you will learn how to meet that precise instant and how to use it as the doorway to something deeper. So when the old narrative tightens, you will not argue with it. You will bring in another presence, another view. Imagine for a moment that your life today was being watched by someone very calm, very kind, very clear-eyed, not a judge, not a critic, a quiet, wise friend, seated just outside the edge of your fear. See them there, unhurried, breathing with you. They watch you wake, move through your day, make your choices. They see the messages you did not answer because you were tired. They see the conversation you tried to have, even though your voice shook. They see the way you carried your pain without telling anyone, and still remembered to be gentle with one person. Nothing dramatic, just the small human weight of being you. Now ask yourself, in this stillness, how would this person describe you? Not the way your fear describes you, not the way your harshest memory describes you. How would they speak about your efforts, your struggles, your small acts of courage that no one else notices? This is the time to listen. Let their eyes, not your old story, set the tone. You may hear something simple. They might say, "You are trying, even when you are tired." They might say, "You were never promised ease, and yet you keep showing up." They might say, "You care more than you admit." Let it be plain. Let it be honest. Let it be kinder than you are used to. You are not your thoughts about yourself. You are the space in which those thoughts appear, rise, and fall away. Cognitive science calls this your narrative identity, the story you repeat until it feels like nature. But like any story, it can be told from many angles. Your wise friend is simply choosing a truer angle, one that includes your courage as well as your mistakes, your persistence as well as your delays. Let this imagined voice offer you one or two sentences, not affirmations you do not believe, but words that feel both honest and gentle. Perhaps I am learning to meet my life with more patience. Perhaps I fail and I return to myself again. Feel which sentences land in your body with a little more peace, a little more room to breathe. If you can, write them down. If you are already drifting towards sleep, repeat them silently with your breath. With each in-breath, receive this wiser perspective. With each out-breath, let it fall away, the old narration that only knows how to accuse. This is what you can control. Which story you rehearse in this moment. Guard it fiercely. These few sentences are not decoration. They are a new path in the mind. In the next section, you will learn how to return to them each night until they become the way you instinctively see yourself. Now, imagine this. The light of the day has gone. The noise has thinned. You are back in this small, private world of breath, blanket, and thought. This is the time to listen, not to the loudest voice in your mind, but to the quiet one underneath. the one you are just beginning to trust. You know the path now. First, you notice the still point, that small, steady place behind the eyes, beneath the chest, where awareness rests. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which they rise and fall, dramatic and insistent, and then fade. You pause there, even for a few seconds, and the whole night begins to change. From that stillness you name the old scripts, the harsh line you repeat about your failures, the inherited sentence from family or culture that says, "This is just who you are." Cognitive science calls this narrative identity, the story that predicts how you feel and what you choose. The Stoics and the Taoists said the same thing more simply. Do not mistake the passing story for your nature. Then you choose one true sentence, not a fantasy, not a slogan, a line that is both honest and kind. I am learning to meet myself with respect. I am allowed to begin again. I can respond with courage, even when I feel fear. Each night you repeat it, you deepen a new groove in the mind, a quiet path back to dignity. After that, you reflect gently. How did I live today? Where did I act from my values, and where did I abandon them? People who frame their hardships as growth report more peace and resilience. You are doing that in real time, transforming pain into instruction instead of accusation. You are not here to punish yourself. You are here to understand. The power is not in any single night. One calm evening will not erase years of self-criticism, but the quiet accumulation of these returns does something that no dramatic breakthrough can do. Night after night, you return to yourself. Night after night, you choose what you can control, your attention, your tone, your next inner line. Think of each evening as a doorway. Outside the door, other people, outcomes, the past, the uncertain future. Inside the door, this breath, this attitude, this small, clear choice. Guard it fiercely. You were never promised ease, but you were given this power of response. No one can take that from you. Even now, listening to this, you are already living a different story. The story of someone who is willing to wake up kindly to their own life. Let the old narration keep talking if it must, and let it fall away, line by line, as you keep walking back through this doorway. In the next section, you will see how to weave this nightly return into the way you move through your days, until the story you practice at night becomes the way you live in the light. So now, as you stand in that doorway, between the old narration and a different life, pause. Before you step into tomorrow's story, come back here, to this breath, to this night, to this simple, living moment. Every story you tell about yourself reaches away from here. It stretches backward into the past, or forward into the future. I have always been this way. I will never change. Soon, when I finally fix myself, all of these are shadows on the wall. Your actual life is not happening in those memories or predictions. It is happening now, in this inhalation, in this exhalation, in the quiet weight of your body resting where you are. This is the time to listen. Gently close the book of your life for a while. Let the pages fall shut. You do not need to solve your past tonight. You do not need to manage your future. You only need to return to yourself in the most direct way possible. Feel your breath, not as an idea, but as sensation. Cool air entering the nose, the slight expansion of your chest or belly, warm air leaving, rising, falling. Nothing to improve, nothing to control, just the simple rhythm that has carried you through every story you have ever told. Now, notice the body that this breath is moving through, the contact points, the weight of your head, the heaviness of your legs, the way the mattress or chair supports you without asking anything in return. Scan slowly, as if you were greeting an old friend. Is there tension in your jaw, your shoulders, your hands? Meet it with awareness, not with judgment. You are not your thoughts. You are not even your tension. You are the space in which these sensations appear and pass. Let your senses open, one by one. The faint sounds in the room or outside the window, the temperature of the air on your skin, any trace of scent, any hint of light behind closed eyes. You do not have to reach for any of it. Let it come to you, like water, flowing to the lowest place. This is Taoist presence, soft, yielding, unforced. When water meets a stone, it does not argue. It curves around, patient, persistent, completely itself. The Stoics would call this acceptance, not resignation, but a clear seeing of what is here, in this moment, without adding fear or extra pain. You cannot rewrite yesterday tonight. You cannot guarantee tomorrow. But you can choose how you meet this breath. This is what you can control. Let every old narrative be like leaves on the surface of a river. They may drift through your awareness, repeating their familiar lines. You always fail. You are behind. You are not enough. See them. Name them as stories. Then let them drift downstream. You do not need to fight them. You also do not need to follow them. The present moment is your safe shore, your home base. Each time you notice that you have been swept into the past or the future, you can quietly step back onto this ground. One breath, one sensation, one simple fact. You are here. Guard it fiercely, this capacity to return. It is your inner citadel in Taoist form, soft on the outside, unshakable at the core. You were never promised ease, but you were given this refuge. In the next section, you will learn how to carry this home base into your days, so that even as life moves and changes, you know how to come back, again and again, to where your real life is happening. Now you begin to notice something subtle. When you return to yourself, when you rest in this inner citadel, there is still movement passing through. Sensations, images, words. Your life is not just what happens. It is also the story your mind tells about what happens. The mind moves fast, faster than your breath, faster than your heartbeat. An event appears, and in an instant your mind wraps it in interpretation, judgment, and prediction. You send a message. They do not reply, and before you exhale, your mind has written a chapter. They do not care. I said something wrong. This will always happen to me. The raw moment is small. The story becomes vast. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Modern psychology agrees. You are not only living events, you are living explanations, meanings, forecasts. This is why two people can stand inside the same moment and inhabit different worlds. One person loses a job and tells themselves, "This proves I am a failure." Another faces the same loss and quietly says, "This is painful, but it is also a chance to grow, to realign with my nature." The event is the same. The inner weather is not. Think of a simple scene. Two friends invite a third to join them, and the third says no. One friend's mind whispers, "They must be tired. I hope they rest." The other friend's mind tightens around, "They do not like me. I am always the outsider." The words spoken were identical. The stories were not. The first mind finds peace. The second mind finds fear and isolation. This is the time to listen. Gently, without blame, look at how your own mind does this. Recall a recent moment that still tugs at you. Perhaps a conversation, a message, a silence, a look. See if you can separate what was observable from what you added. What did you actually see and hear? What did the other person actually do or say? And then, what did you tell yourself it meant? Maybe the fact is, they looked away while I spoke. The story might be, they are bored with me, I am not worth listening to. Feel the difference. The first is neutral, almost quiet. The second is heavy, full of old pain. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which facts appear, and stories are woven around them. Do not turn this into another weapon against yourself. This habit is not a flaw unique to you. It is human nature. The mind tries to protect you by predicting pain, by making sense of uncertainty, by controlling what it cannot control. You were never promised ease, and so the mind tries to build it by telling stories that prepare you for the worst. Tonight, the practice is not to stop telling stories. It is to notice the gap between what happened and what you narrated, to hold that gap with curiosity instead of judgment. In the next section, you will learn how to step more fully into that space and how to choose, with clarity, which stories to keep and which to let it fall away. So now you are standing in that gap between what happened and what you told yourself about it, between the bare event and the heavy story wrapped around it like a tight band. In this quiet, you do not need a sword, you need a lantern. Questioning is that lantern, not a weapon to attack yourself with, not a tool to prove you wrong, but a soft light you bring into the dark room of old beliefs, just to see what is actually there. This is the time to listen, to feel your breath move in and out, to notice the familiar harsh sentence that so often appears in your mind. Perhaps it is, I always mess things up. Perhaps it is, no one really wants me, or I am just not good enough. Do not push it away. Do not agree with it either. Simply let it appear in the light. Now, gently, you ask the first question. Is this completely true? Not partly true. Not sometimes true. Completely true. Across every moment, every relationship, every choice you have ever made. Your mind might rush to defend the story, to collect evidence, to prove the case against you. That is its old habit. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which those thoughts rise and fall. Stay with the breath. Stay with the question. Notice even a single exception, a project you finished, a friend who stayed, a moment of courage. The harsh story begins to loosen, just a little. You are not erasing your pain. You are making room for clarity. Then a second question. Who taught me this? Where did I first hear words like these? A parent's disappointment, a teacher's offhand remark, a culture that worships perfection and speed. You were never promised ease, but you were also never born saying, I am a failure. That sentence has a history. Seeing its origin gives you a new kind of control. You can honor where it came from and still let it fall away. And now, a third question. What else could be true right now? Not a fantasy, not a false praise, but another honest angle. Maybe I am learning. Maybe I am tired, not useless. Maybe I made a mistake and I still have the power to choose my next step. Notice how your body responds when you say these alternatives slowly. There is a little more space, a little more peace. This is the practice, not to win an argument with yourself, but to soften the walls of the story, to return to yourself as you are in this moment, breathing, changing, capable of a different choice. Each question is a hand on the latch of an old door. In the next section, you will see what happens when that door actually opens, and what waits for you on the other side of the story you thought could never change. When that old door opens, you do not step into a new room. You step into a different way of seeing yourself. The walls are the same, The life is the same, but the story is softer, less certain, less cruel. Notice how often your mind speaks in stone. I am just this way. I am anxious. I am bad with people. I always fail. Each sentence feels solid, heavy, permanent, as if it were carved into your bones. Yet even as you repeat it, your breath is moving, your cells are changing, your thoughts are rising and falling. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these sentences appear, linger, and then, if you let them, fade. The Taoists would tell you to look to the river. A river never says, I am this exact shape. It only flows, adjusting to rock and root, to drought and flood, without believing that any one bend is its final form. Your nature is closer to this river than to a statue. You are not meant to be frozen in a single description. You are meant to move. The seasons teach the same lesson. Winter does not apologize for being cold, and it does not cling when spring arrives. It lets itself change. It lets itself fall away. Tonight, you are invited to see your identity as weather, not as stone, passing, repeating, but never finally fixed. The Stoics understood this in their own way. They did not say, I am a patient person, and then rest in that label. They said, today, I will practice patience. They saw character as a daily choice, renewed each morning and each night, through reflection, correction, and the courage to begin again. What you can control is not the personality you were handed, but the practice you commit to. So feel the difference now. I am just this way becomes, I am learning. I always fail becomes, I am practicing. I am bad with people becomes, I am opening to others, one conversation at a time. The facts of your past do not change, but the story that holds them can soften, can grow, can make room for the person you are becoming. This is the time to listen. Gently bring to mind one hard sentence you use about yourself. Do not argue with it, just hold it in awareness, like a stone in your hand. Then, with your next slow breath, rewrite it in a way that honors movement, practice, and choice. Guard it fiercely, this new, truer line. It is a seed. In the next section, you will plant that seed in action and see how a single, rewritten sentence can guide your evenings, your mornings, and the quiet decisions that reshape an entire life. That seed is small, but it is enough. You do not need a complete map tonight. You only need a direction, a gentle North Star story that points you toward the life that feels more like your own. A North Star is not a command. It does not shout. It does not threaten. It does not demand perfection. It is quiet guidance in the dark, a fixed point you can turn toward, again and again when you forget, when you are tired, when fear is loud. The Stoics and the Taoists would both tell you the same thing in different language. Let your story be a direction, not a prison. So instead of promising outcomes you cannot control, you turn toward qualities that are always within reach. This is what you can control: your honesty, your kindness, your steadiness, your courage. Not whether others approve, not whether you never fall, but whether you return to yourself when you do. Imagine a life shaped by a few simple anchors. I tell the truth as gently as I can. I meet myself and others with patience. I keep walking, even when I'm afraid. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these stories rise and fall, appear and fade, like clouds against a whiter sky. Narrative psychologists have found that people who frame their hardships as growth, as learning, as movement, suffer less, heal faster, sleep more easily. The outer facts may not change. The inner story does. And from that, new choices emerge. So, let us turn inward for a moment. This is the time to listen. Let your breath slow. Feel the weight of your body supported. Then ask, softly, without pressure, if my life moved a little closer to what matters to me, what would that feel like? Not 10 years from now, not in some perfect future. Here, in the next season of your days, would it feel like more honesty in small conversations, more steadiness when plans break, more courage in saying no, or in finally saying yes? Notice what stirs when you ask. Notice where your chest loosens, where a quiet yes appears without effort. Guard it fiercely. That yes, it is your nature speaking beneath the noise of fear and habit. Now, from that place, shape one short sentence. Not grand, not dramatic, true, kind, and possible. I am learning to meet my life with courage. I am becoming a steadier friend to myself. I choose small, honest steps over silent resentment. Let it be modest. Let it be human. You were never promised ease, only the chance to practice. Hold this sentence in your mind, as if you were holding a small candle in the dark. You do not need to prove it tonight. You only need to keep it lit. In the next section, you will see how to weave this North Star into your evenings and mornings, so that it becomes less a wish and more the quiet way you walk. So now the candle is lit, the North Star is named. But how does a sentence become a self? Not through grand vows, not through dramatic reinventions, but through quiet repetitions so small they almost disappear into the day. Identity does not harden in a single declaration. It settles, grain by grain, through the actions you repeat, through the choices you make when no one is watching, through the way you speak to yourself in the first fragile minutes of morning and in the last tired moments before sleep. You are not your thoughts, but your thoughts and your actions. Rehearse together, begin to feel like a person. This is why you must guard it fiercely. The Stoics understood this. They did not wait for perfect conditions to live in alignment. They began where they were, with what they could touch, with what they could control. In this moment only, a single decision, a single response, a single breath, taken with intention instead of habit. Think of micro-alignments as tiny bridges between your old story and your new one. You do not need to cross a canyon in one leap. You only need one plank, then another. Tonight, that might look like sending one honest message you have delayed, not to fix your whole life, but to practice being the person who speaks plainly. Or it might be a 5-minute walk tomorrow, taken not to transform your body, but to honor the story that says, I care for this body that carries me. Small, almost invisible, yet decisive. Perhaps your North Star includes self-respect. Then one boundary is a micro-alignment, saying, I can't talk right now, I'll call you tomorrow, instead of abandoning your own need for rest. Perhaps it includes compassion. Then one kind word to yourself, whispered when you make a mistake. I am learning, is a micro-alignment. The act is small. The direction is immense. This is the time to listen. What is one action, so small it feels almost trivial, that reflects the new story you are writing? Not the story others demand, not the one fear has rehearsed, but the one that feels like your deeper nature. Remember, you are the space in which these stories rise and fall. You can let it fall away, the old script that called you helpless, or broken, or too late. When you wake tomorrow, you will have one moment of quiet before the old currents pull. In that moment, you will choose. Will you reach for your phone or for one conscious breath? Will you rush, or will you take 5 minutes to walk, to write a single honest line, to speak one gentle sentence to yourself? Your life will answer. And in the next section, You will see how to weave these tiny choices into a simple ritual, so that each day bends, almost imperceptibly, toward a different ending than the one you once assumed was yours. So now, the day is behind you. The light has softened, the noise has thinned, and you are here, with your breath, at the quiet edge of sleep. This is where your story usually grows loud. Notice what your mind tends to do at night. It replays the moment you stumbled over your words, not the conversation that went well. It circles the one message left unanswered, not the kindness you offered without fanfare. It lingers on failure, on fear, on every place you did not meet your own impossible standard. This is how the old narrative reinforces itself, night after night. The Stoics knew this pattern. They ended their days with review, not to condemn themselves, but to reclaim what they could control. Taoist sages saw the same tendency and invited a softer movement, a return to the flowing nature of things. You can borrow both. You can turn this late-night replay into a gentle practice, a way to return to yourself instead of to your oldest wounds. For tonight, you will keep it simple. 3 questions, asked quietly, without rush, without a courtroom in your head. First, where did I act in line with who I want to be? Let your attention move slowly back through the day. Maybe you listened fully when you might have escaped into distraction. Maybe you spoke one honest sentence instead of hiding. Maybe you paused, took a breath, and chose patience over reaction. Let these moments count. Guard it fiercely, this habit of seeing what was good. Second, where did I get hooked by the old story? Not to punish, to notice. Perhaps you heard again the voice that says, "I always fail," and you believed it for a moment. Perhaps you withdrew, or chased approval, or argued long after clarity was gone. See these scenes with the eyes of a kind mentor, not an enemy. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these thoughts rise and fall. When you see them clearly, you can let it fall away. Third, what did I learn for tomorrow? This is where Stoic discipline and Taoist ease meet. You acknowledge the misstep, you extract the lesson, you release the weight. One small adjustment, a different word you might choose, a boundary you will keep, a breath you will take before you answer. This is what you can control. Let this 3-question reflection become a brief ritual, a signal to your mind that the day is closing. This is the time to listen and gently adjust, not to wage war against yourself. You were never promised ease, but you were given the power to begin again. In the next section, you will see how to anchor this ritual in writing so that your new story has a place to land, and your nights become a quiet workshop where a different future is patiently shaped. So now, as the room darkens and your breath slows, you will give that new story a place to touch the past. Not all of it, just one small scene, one page in a very long book. Some memories become anchors. You return to them again and again, not because you enjoy the pain, but because they quietly explain who you think you are. The awkward moment at school, the harsh comment from a parent, the time you failed in public and felt the heat of shame in your face. One scene becomes a verdict. I am not enough. I am not lovable. I will always fail. You are not your thoughts. You are not even the first story your mind wrapped around those moments. You are the space in which memory appears, shifts, and softens. This is the time to listen, not to the old accusation, but to something quieter beneath it. For tonight, do not choose the deepest wound. Do not go to the memory that still steals your breath and tightens your chest. Begin with something mild or moderate, a scene that still stings but does not overwhelm. You were never promised ease, and you do not need to prove your courage by reopening your greatest hurt. Wisdom is also a form of courage. Let a smaller memory rise, perhaps a teacher dismissing your question, a friend turning away, a small failure at work. Notice which one appears first when you ask gently, "Where did I decide something harsh about myself?" Trust what comes. See the scene as if it were on a screen before you. You are there, younger, caught in the moment. But you are also here, watching, breathing, safe in this bed. Feel the distance. Feel your breath. You cannot change what happened. You can change how you hold it. That is what you can control. Stay with the image. Watch your younger self. Look at their eyes, their shoulders, the way they are trying to cope with fear, confusion, or shame. Do you see how hard they were trying to belong, to do well, to understand? Let your gaze be kind. Let it be patient. Let it be honest. Now, imagine a compassionate presence entering the scene. It might be an older version of you. It might be a wise stranger, a teacher, a quiet friend, someone who sees clearly and does not judge. They stand beside your younger self. They do not erase the event. They offer a different meaning. Perhaps they say, "You were tired," or "You were never taught how," or their words were about their own pain, not your worth. Let one simple, truer sentence arise. Guard it fiercely. This is your small rewrite. You are not lying to yourself. You are seeing more of the truth. Cognitive science confirms what the Stoics intuited. When you reframe a memory as growth instead of doom, your body calms, your sleep deepens, your future choices shift. A single sentence can change a life. Hold that new sentence with your breath. In, to receive it. Out, to let it fall away from the old verdict. Repeat it softly in your mind as you watch the scene again. Notice how the posture of your younger self might change, even slightly, under this kinder interpretation. A little less collapse, a little more dignity. Now ask, quietly, if this was not proof that I am broken, what was it? Was it training? Was it a first attempt? Was it a sign that you needed guidance, not punishment? Let the answer come slowly. Do not force it. You are learning to return to yourself without the old weapon in your hand. In a moment, you will take this rewritten sentence to the page, so that the new meaning does not fade when morning comes. But before you write, there is one more layer to uncover in this scene, one more hidden choice you have been making without seeing it at all. That hidden choice has been speaking through more than words. It has been speaking through your body, through the way you sit, the way you walk, the way you brace for impact before anything has even touched you. Old stories do not stay in the mind alone. They sink into muscle and bone, into posture, into breath. The story of "I am too much" often shows up as shrinking, as a chest that caves in, as shoulders that round forward to take up less space. The story of "I am not safe" appears as a tight jaw, a stiff neck, a stomach that never quite unclenches. You do not need to believe these sentences to feel them. Your nervous system has been rehearsing them for years. This is the time to listen, not to the old narration, but to the quieter signals underneath it. Gently, bring to mind one familiar self-criticism, the one that returns whenever you feel tired or uncertain. Do not argue with it. Just let it float at the edge of awareness, like a subtitle on a dim screen. As it appears, notice. Where does your body react first? Scan slowly, as if you were moving a soft light, from the crown of your head down to your toes. Does your forehead tighten? Does your jaw lock? Do your shoulders creep up toward your ears? Does your chest harden, or your breath become shallow and quick? You are not your thoughts, and you are not these tensions either. You are the space in which they appear. the awareness that can observe them without immediately obeying them. Now, without forcing, begin to answer that old story with small physical shifts. Let your jaw soften as if you were about to speak kindly to yourself, and then simply chose silence instead. Let your tongue rest on the floor of your mouth. Let it fall away, that constant urge to clench. Lengthen your spine, not in rigid pride, but as if you were quietly remembering your own dignity. Imagine a thread drawing the crown of your head gently upward, while your weight drops down into the surface beneath you. Loosen your shoulders. Let them roll back and down, widening the space across your chest. Allow the front of your body to open, even if a part of you still expects pain, especially then. You were never promised ease, but you are allowed to meet difficulty without curling in on yourself. Bring your attention to the breath. Inhale naturally, and then give more care to the exhale. Let it lengthen by a beat or two, again and again. Each slow exhale tells your body, and therefore your story, I am not in danger in this moment. I have a choice now. These are not random stretches. They are sentences written in flesh. When you soften the jaw, lengthen the spine, loosen the shoulders, and slow the exhale, you are quietly saying, I am safe enough now to carry a different story. This is what you can control tonight. Not the past, not other people, but the way you inhabit this body as you return to yourself. In a moment, you will put words on the page, but first you will let this new posture settle, so the story you write is supported from the inside out. Let the body rest in this new posture for a moment more, because as soon as you begin to write a different story, the old one will feel it. It will stir. It will push back. Do not be surprised when it does. The mind clings to what is familiar, even when the familiar brings pain. Like a river that has carved one deep channel through the earth, your thoughts will try to rush back to the old path, to the old identity, to the old script that says, this is just who I am. That pull is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that something is shifting. The Taoists spoke of waves, rising, cresting, falling back into the sea. Emotions move in you the same way. A surge of fear, a spike of shame, a sudden flood of memories that say, you will never change. They rise high, they feel solid, they seem to define the whole ocean, but they are not the ocean. You are the space in which they rise and fall. So when the old script returns, you do not need to fight it. You do not need to argue with it, or prove it wrong, or drown in it. You practice something quieter. Notice, name, soften. Notice first. You feel the tightening in the chest, the rush of heat in the face, the familiar sentence forming in the mind. I always ruin things. I am bad with people. I cannot be trusted. See it as a pattern, not as truth. Remember, you are not your thoughts. Then, name it gently, not as an enemy, but as an old habit. You can say, this is the old story visiting. This is the fear of being seen. This is the memory of failure. In cognitive psychology, they call this narrative identity, the way repeated stories shape how you feel and choose. You are simply recognizing the narrative as a narrative. Finally, soften around it. Let the body loosen a little. Let the breath lengthen. Let it fall away from the center of your attention. You are not pushing the story out. You are giving it more space, so it does not fill the whole sky. This is what you can control: your response, your posture, your willingness to return to yourself instead of following every wave. You were never promised ease. Change does not move in a straight, clean line. It moves in spirals, in returns, in nights when the old script feels louder than ever. But each time you notice, name, and soften, you weaken its hold. You are training the mind to pause, to choose, to rest in clarity. In a moment, you will meet one of your oldest sentences on the page, and you will see what happens when you do not obey it. In a moment, you will meet one of your oldest sentences on the page, and you will see what happens when you do not obey it. But you will not meet it alone. Tonight, you will borrow a different kind of voice. Earlier, you saw how many of your harshest thoughts were borrowed. Old echoes from parents, teachers, culture, past pain. You did not invent most of the criticism that lives in your head. It moved into you. It repeated itself until it felt like truth. Now you will use the same doorway in the other direction. If the mind can borrow harm, it can also borrow help. Let your breath slow. Feel the weight of your body supported. This is the time to listen. In the quiet, behind your thoughts, invite an image to appear, a calm, wise figure. It might be a teacher who once believed in you, an elder who spoke few words, but each one mattered, an ancestor you never met, but feel, or a guide you imagine, shaped from every book, every kindness, every example of courage you have ever seen. Do not rush. Let this presence form at its own pace, according to its own nature. How do they sit or stand? What is the expression in their eyes? Not perfection, not judgment, just deep, steady clarity. You are not your thoughts, and you are not their thoughts either. You are the space in which this meeting happens. Now, bring to mind one familiar self-attack, a sentence you know too well. Perhaps, I always fail, or no one really wants me, or I will never change. Feel how your body reacts when you say it inside. Notice the tightening, the fear, the old pain, and then, gently, place this sentence in front of the wise figure. Let them hear it fully. Ask them, silently, how do you see this? Then wait. Do not force an answer. Let it arise in its own time. Maybe they say, you have failed, and you have also learned. You are still here. Maybe they answer, some have not seen you, but that does not mean you are not worth seeing. Maybe they simply look at you with such unshaken acceptance that the sentence begins to crumble on its own. Notice the difference in tone. Steady, not frantic. Honest, not flattering. Firm, but kind. This is what you can control, the voice you choose to amplify inside. The old line may still appear, but it no longer gets the last word. You can let it fall away. Each time you repeat this, you are training a new pattern. At first, it may feel like pretending. That is all right. Every skill begins as something borrowed. Over time, this borrowed voice becomes less like a visitor and more like a part of you. You begin to speak to yourself with the same patience, the same grounded care. Guard it fiercely. You were never promised ease, but you were given this capacity to return to yourself, to choose your inner companions, to rewrite the tone of your own mind. In the next part, you will place this new voice directly beside your old story on the page, and you will watch, sentence by sentence, which one you decide to live from. So now, as the night deepens and the page of your mind lies open, we turn to something very simple and very difficult, the way you speak to yourself. The quiet sentences no one else hears, but that shape how you move, how you choose, how you sleep. You already know the double standard. With others you are patient, forgiving, gentle. With yourself you are strict, merciless, cold. You call a friend human for the same mistake you call yourself hopeless for. One event, two stories, two tones. Only one is in your control. Cognitive psychologists call this narrative identity, the story you repeat about who you are. It predicts your well-being far more than any single success or failure. People who frame their hardships as growth report more peace, more resilience, less despair. The events do not change. The explanation does. That is where your power lives. This is the time to listen. Notice the last harsh thing you said to yourself today. Maybe it was about your body, your work, your past. Let it appear for a moment, like text on a screen. Do not argue with it yet. Just see it. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these sentences rise and fall. Now, imagine a close friend sitting across from you in this same darkness, whispering that exact line about themselves. Hear your own words in their mouth. I always ruin everything. I am unlovable. I will never change. Feel what happens in your chest when they say it. Would you agree? Or would something in you stand up? Let that protective impulse speak. Silently rehearse what you would tell them. You might say, "You are doing your best with what you knew then. You are allowed to be in progress. One bad day does not erase who you are." Hear the tone you would use. Warm, steady, honest but not cruel. Now, without changing a single word, turn that voice inward. Aim it at the old sentence on the screen. This is your practice tonight, to return to yourself as you would return to a friend. The same patience, the same clarity, the same refusal to reduce a whole person to one moment of fear or pain. Choose one or two simple phrases of reassurance to keep. Short, true, easy to recall when you are tired. I am learning. I can choose again. This moment is not the whole story. These are not decorations. They are tools. When the old narrative appears, you place one of these beside it. You do not have to believe it completely. You only have to offer it. You were never promised ease, but you were given this, the ability to adjust the tone of your own mind, word by word. In the next section, you will take these phrases and weave them into a new story on the page, so that when the old voice returns, you will already have another one waiting. Before you pick up the pen, before you reach for the page, notice something subtle moving in you, a quiet urgency, a wish to fix everything tonight, to write one perfect sentence that erases years of pain and confusion. Do you feel that pull in your chest? That small impatience behind your eyes? This is the time to listen. That urgency is understandable. You have carried these old words for so long that the moment you glimpse another way, you want to run toward it, to seize control and be done. But nature does not move like that. The Tao does not leap from winter to summer in a single night. It passes through 1,000 unnoticed moments of thaw. Think of a seed beneath frozen ground. On the surface, nothing changes. The field looks empty. The air is cold. Yet slowly, without announcement, the shell softens. The first tender root begins to turn toward the dark, seeking what it cannot yet see. No one applauds this. No one even knows. But this is where the whole forest begins. Your work tonight is like that. You are not here to finish the story. You are here to soften the shell. Each time you pause before believing an old thought, each time you say, "You are not your thoughts," each time you question a harsh conclusion about yourself, a root turns, small, quiet, real. Cognitive science will tell you that even slight shifts in how you explain your life to yourself change your emotions, your sleep, your choices. The Taoists would say the same thing in another way. Change the current a little, and the whole river will arrive at a different sea. You do not need a dramatic revelation. You need a gentle, repeated turning. So when you hear the urge to fix everything at once, notice it, bow to it, then let it fall away. Return to yourself, to this breath, to this single sentence you are reshaping right now. This is what you can control, not the whole book of your life, not every chapter at once, only the tone of this line, in this moment, Even as you rest, the work continues. The mind you are training does not stop learning. When you close your eyes, as you drift toward sleep, the new phrases you have offered, the softer interpretations, will settle deeper. They will wait for you in the morning, like footprints in fresh snow, quiet evidence of where you have already begun to walk. Allow that. Trust that. You are the space in which these stories rise and fall, not the stories themselves. Guard it fiercely, this simple piece of not needing to be finished. In the next section, you will give your new story a clearer shape on the page. But tonight, you are allowed to rest inside the unfinished and know that this too is progress. So you rest here, inside what is not yet finished, and something else begins to work, quietly, out of sight. This is the time to listen, not to the old story, but to the small movements underneath it, the way a body heals under a bandage where you cannot watch it. Think of a cut on your skin. At first it is raw, visible, painful. You check it again and again, as if staring will make it close. But the real work happens when you are not looking, when you are sleeping, when your attention has moved on. Cells knit, tissue reforms, the body returns to its own nature. Healing is slow, but it is sure. Your inner change moves in the same way. You do not need to see it to know it is occurring. In fact, the more you demand proof, the more you disturb the process. You were never promised ease. You were promised a path that requires patience, discipline, and faith in what you cannot yet measure. The Stoics understood this. They spoke of practice, not performance, of returning again and again to the same small actions without demanding immediate results. You pause before reacting. You tell the truth when a lie would be simpler. You choose to breathe through fear rather than feed it. One night of this, and nothing seems different. 1 month, and you begin to notice that your anger cools faster, your shame lingers less, your mind returns to yourself with less resistance. This is what you can control. The repetition, not the timeline. The effort, not the outcome. Marcus did not become Marcus in a week. He became himself by writing the same reminders, by correcting the same errors, by accepting that progress is made in inches, not leaps. Taoism speaks the same language in a different image. Water and stone, the soft that shapes the hard. A single drop does nothing. 1,000 drops leave no mark. But over years, over lifetimes, water carves through mountains, not by force, by persistence, by alignment with its own nature. You are not your thoughts about how fast you should be changing. You are the space in which this slow river of practice moves. So when you notice a tiny shift, a softer tone in your own self-talk, a breath where before there was only reaction, a moment of peace in a place that used to be pure panic, do not dismiss it. Honor it as real evidence. Protect it. Guard it fiercely. This is your inner wound closing. Can you feel even a fraction more distance from the old story tonight? Can you sense how it does not grip you with the same absolute power? That distance is water through stone. That distance is the Stoic discipline you have been building in the dark. Soon, you will give this new current a clearer channel, words on a page, a shape you can see. But before that, there is one more layer of unseen work you must understand. One more hidden turning point your old story will try to resist. Your old story will resist because it survives by noise. But tonight, the noise is fading. The room is dim, the world is softer, and your breath is the only rhythm that matters. This is the time to listen, not to the old narration that runs on habit, but to something quieter, older, more spacious than any sentence you have ever believed about yourself. You have touched it already tonight, without fully naming it. Remember the image of the sky and the weather. Thoughts, memories, scenes from your day, from your past, drift through like clouds. Some are thin and passing. Some feel like storms. Yet the sky itself is not harmed by rain, not defined by thunder, not improved by sunshine. It simply allows. It holds. It remains. In the same way, you are not your thoughts. You are not even the story you have repeated for years. You are the space in which those stories appear and fade. You are the quiet awareness that notices a memory of failure, a surge of fear, a flash of regret, and can say, "There you are," without becoming them. This is not a theory. It is a practice of seeing, again and again. Cognitive science calls this narrative identity, the way you string events into a tale about who you are. The Stoics and the Taoists both point to something deeper than that tale. They remind you that the same event can be told as a curse, a wound, or a turning point. The facts remain. The meaning is your choice. As you lie here, feel how each story rises on the surface of awareness and dissolves back into it. A memory from childhood, a sentence someone once spoke with carelessness or with pain, a label you picked up from family or culture. Watch one of them form, like mist in cool air, and then let it fall away. Do not argue. Do not fix. Just allow it to thin and disappear into the larger sky of you. You were never promised ease. You were given something better. You were given the capacity to return to yourself, to what you can control in this moment, even as old narratives try to pull you back. You cannot control which thoughts first appear. You can control how tightly you grip them, how seriously you take them, how long you feed them with attention. So now, soften your grip. Let the edges of every story blur. I always fail. I am behind. I am too much. I am not enough. See them as passing weather, not permanent truth. Feel the relief of not having to solve them tonight. Your only task now is simple. Feel the breath enter. Feel the breath leave. Feel awareness holding everything. Guard it fiercely, this small island of clarity before sleep. Each exhale is a quiet refusal to be reduced to a single chapter, a single role, a single name. You are the one who can watch all stories come and go. Rest there, because from that place, a different kind of story can begin to write itself. Soon, you will give that new story clearer words. For now, you prepare the ground by resting as the sky itself. And now, in this wide inner sky, you begin a simple evening ritual, not a performance review, not a trial, a soft daily checkpoint, where you meet the story of this day with clarity and with mercy, and you end the day in peace instead of rumination. This is the time to listen, not to argue with yourself, not to build a case for how well or how poorly you lived. You are here to see, to notice, to return to yourself without fear. The Stoics did this each night, asking, "What did I do? What did I feel? Where did I wander from my values?" The Taoists would say, "Let the river of the day empty itself, without pushing the current, without grabbing at the leaves. Begin very simply. What happened today? Let scenes arise without forcing them. A conversation, an email, a silence, a mistake, a small kindness. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these moments appear and fade. Watch them pass across the mind like clouds across the evening sky. No need to fix them. No need to edit. Then ask gently, what story did I tell about this? When that person did not reply, did you say, I am unimportant? When you stumbled over your words, did you decide, I am bad with people? Cognitive psychology shows that these quiet narratives shape your emotions, your choices, your sleep. You feel their weight in your chest. You feel their echo in your breath. You are never promised ease. The mind will often choose the harshest version of the story, thinking it is protecting you from future pain. But this is only another habit, another pattern, another place where you can practice what you can control. You cannot control the past event. You can control the meaning you continue to attach to it tonight. So you add one more question. What else might be true? Perhaps they were busy. Perhaps I was learning. Perhaps I acted from fear this time, and next time I will choose differently. People who frame hardship as training, not punishment, are shown to suffer less, to sleep more deeply, to wake with more courage. You can join them here, in this quiet moment. Notice the shift when you do this without self-attack. No lecture, no scolding, only curiosity. This is Taoist non-striving. You are not forcing yourself to be better. You are allowing a truer story to surface. You are letting the mud settle so the water can clear. You simply see, and what is false begins to let it fall away on its own. Guard it fiercely, this small evening review. This is not about perfection. It is about a daily, gentle course correction, a practice of returning, again and again, to a story that is honest, kind, and aligned with your nature. Soon, you will give these new stories words on a page and actions in the daylight. For now, you rehearse them in silence so that tomorrow they can begin to live through you. So let us give that review a simple shape, something you can return to when you are tired, when your mind is foggy, when all you can manage is a few quiet breaths in the dark. 3 gentle questions, no more, no less. The first question is this: what did I live? Not, what should I have lived? Not, what would have impressed anyone? Only, what actually happened today? You wake, you move through your routines, you speak, you work, you rest, you react. You are not your thoughts about the day. You are the space in which the day unfolded. So you look back and simply name it. I woke up late. I snapped at my partner. I finished something I had been avoiding. I scrolled for an hour. I helped a friend. I walked outside and felt the air on my face. Keep it plain. Keep it brief. 10 lines, or 3, or 1. This is not a performance. It is a record. The second question is quieter and more revealing. What did I tell myself? Here, you look under the events, into the story that wrapped around them. I woke up late, and I told myself, I am hopeless. I will never change. I snapped at my partner, and I told myself, I always ruin everything. I finished something hard, and I told myself, it was nothing. Anyone could have done it. Notice the phrases that repeat. Notice the harshness, the fear, the habit of shrinking what is good and enlarging what is painful. This is the time to listen, not to argue, not to correct, just to hear the tone of your inner narrator, as if you were listening to a stranger on the train. Would you trust this voice? Would you let it speak to someone you love? Then the third question: what would a kinder, truer story sound like? Not a fantasy, not flattery, a story that is both accurate and merciful. I woke up late, and I am learning to care for my body with more discipline. I snapped at my partner, and I regret it, and tomorrow I will practice pausing my breath before I speak. I finished something hard, and it mattered, and I can acknowledge that without arrogance. You were never promised ease, only the chance to choose your stance toward what arrives. You are not trying to overwrite reality. You are learning what you can control, the meaning you give to what you lived. Let the old verdicts soften. Let it fall away, the habit of calling yourself names. Guard it fiercely, this new, quieter honesty. Your answers can live only in your mind, a few sentences whispered before sleep. That is enough. Cognitive science will tell you that repeated stories shape identity. The Stoics will tell you that repeated judgments shape character. Tao will remind you that no story can capture your full nature. So you ask these 3 questions, night after night, and without effort, something in you begins to turn. Soon, we will add the smallest actions to match these new stories. For now, you practice seeing. You practice telling the truth more gently, until it becomes the way you move through the day itself. So you practice telling the truth more gently, and something else becomes visible. You start to notice the voice that does not know how to be gentle, the harsh narrator, the one who speaks first, speaks loudest, and claims to be protecting you. This inner storyteller is tense. It scans for danger. It recites every failure, every awkward moment, every delayed response from another person, as proof that you are not enough. It believes that if it criticizes you before anyone else can, you will be safe. Safe from surprise, safe from rejection, safe from hope. It means well. It is fear wearing the mask of authority. You were never promised ease. Somewhere along the way, this narrator decided that constant tension was the price of survival. But look closely. Does this endless commentary give you control, or does it steal it? When you lie down at night and replay the day, who is holding the pen? Who is choosing the words that define you? This is the time to listen, not to obey, but to observe. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these sentences rise and fall, appear and fade. And because you are the space, you are allowed to change who is speaking inside that space. You are allowed to choose a different narrator. Imagine, instead of the critic on a stage, a quiet companion walking beside you. This companion does not perform. It does not attack. It notices. It breathes with you. It speaks rarely, and when it does, its words are simple. Here you stumbled. Here you tried. Here you learned. It cares more about honesty than drama, more about direction than verdict. Tonight, picture yourself at the end of the day, walking a slow path as the light fades. Feel the ground under your feet, the air cooling on your skin, the pace of your own breath. Your harsh narrator is a few steps behind, still muttering, still rehearsing every mistake. But at your side is this quiet companion. You do not have to get rid of the old voice. You just stop letting it walk in front. Together, you review the same events, the awkward conversation, the task you avoided, the moment you were impatient. Under the old narrator, each scene becomes an accusation, a fixed identity. I am bad with people. I am lazy. I am unkind. Under the new companion, the scenes soften. I felt unsure and still showed up. I delayed, and now I see why. I spoke sharply, and I can repair this. Nothing outside you has changed. The day is the same, but the emotional tone is different, quieter, more spacious. This is what you can control, the way you tell the story of what has already happened. As you keep walking with this companion, you return to yourself. You begin to trust this calmer voice, and soon you will let it guide not only how you remember the day, but how you move through the next one. And now, as that calmer voice walks beside you, the path opens toward the water. The day does not need to be carried any farther, not on your shoulders, not in your nervous system. Imagine you step out from the path of thoughts and stand at the edge of a slow, dark river, moving steadily under the night sky. Each event from today is like a leaf already floating past, a comment someone made, a mistake you replay, a success you secretly cling to. All of it already in motion, already being carried by a current far wider than your personal story. Can you see that? The river does not stop to argue with a leaf. It does not hold one close and reject another. It receives, it carries, it lets go. This is the time to listen. You are not here to solve the day. You are here to release it. One by one, take the stories that still tighten your chest and place them gently into the water. The thing you wish you had said, the task you did not finish, the moment you felt small or foolish or behind. Feel the weight of each one in your hand. Then feel the lightness as you set it down and watch it drift. Let it fall away, not because it never mattered, but because it has already happened. You cannot go back. You can only choose how you hold it now. That is what you can control. Your judgment, your grip, your willingness to let the river do what rivers do. In that choice, there is peace. In that peace, your body remembers how to rest. Letting go is not denial. It is not pretending the day was perfect or painless. It is a return to the larger flow, to a wider sense of nature, in which your life is one small, shining thread. You were never promised ease, but you were given this, the ability to loosen your attachment to any single scene and remember the whole. You are the space in which these moments appear and disappear. You are not your thoughts about them. As you place each stressful story into the current, notice what happens in your breath. It slows, it deepens. Your heart softens its pace. The nervous system, so used to bracing for the next impact, begins to understand that, for now, there is no impact coming. Only this moment, only this quiet bank, only the soundless motion of water, carrying pain and pride and fear away. This simple practice is not just poetic, it is biological. When you stop rehearsing the same charged scenes, the body's alarm can finally stand down. Sleep comes easier. The mind stops reaching forward and backward and settles where it has always belonged. Here, you return to yourself. Stay with this river a little longer. There is more to release, and there is something else waiting for you on the opposite shore. On this shore, the water is quieter. The current slows. This is the time to listen, not to the old noise of the day, but to the quiet thread running through it. Each night, before you sleep, you will choose one moment. Not the whole day, not your entire past. Just one small, emotionally charged scene that still tugs at your breath when you remember it. A sharp comment, an awkward silence, a private failure no one else noticed, but you kept replaying. Can you feel one of those rising now? Begin with honesty. Tell the old story the way your mind first told it. 1 or 2 sentences only. I embarrassed myself in that meeting. Everyone could see I was incompetent. I snapped at my child. I'm a terrible parent. I scrolled all evening again. I have no discipline. Do not polish it. Do not correct it yet. Just name the story you have been believing. Then, pause. Breathe. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these thoughts appear and disappear. Cognitive science calls this your narrative identity, the story that quietly tells you who you are. But the Stoics and the Taoists both remind you that this story is not fixed. It is a pattern, a habit, a choice. Now you rewrite, not with fantasy, but with truth, context, and compassion. Ask, what actually happened? In simple, observable terms. What was in your control and what was not? What fear or pain was moving in you? My voice shook in the meeting, but I still shared my idea. I raised my voice at my child after a long, exhausting day, and I apologized. I am learning to respond with more patience. I numbed out on my phone tonight. I see that I was lonely, and tomorrow, I will reach out instead. Notice the shift. Same event, different story. One story says you are doomed to repeat the past. The other says you are in practice. People who frame hardship as growth do not erase pain. They place it in a larger sky. You were never promised ease, but you were given the power to interpret, to learn, to begin again. Guard it fiercely, this power to rename a moment. It is what you can control. You do not have to rewrite your entire life in one night. One moment is enough. One scene, retold with clarity, becomes a quiet signal to your nervous system. We are safe. We are learning. We can rest. Do this every night. Consistency over perfection. Some evenings your rewrite will feel profound. Other nights it will feel small and ordinary. Let it be small. Let it be ordinary. This is how new stories take root, silently, beneath the surface. As you keep this practice, you will begin to feel something subtle. The distance between you and the old roles, the old labels. You return to yourself. And from here, we can go deeper into who you are without them. As the old roles loosen their grip, another question appears in the quiet. What, in this late hour, is still yours to shape, and what must be laid down if you are to sleep? This is the time to listen, to separate what you can control from what you cannot, like sorting light from shadow. There are a few simple things that remain fully within your reach tonight. Your attitude toward this day, your attention in this moment, your breath, moving in and out, your intention for tomorrow. You may not govern the world, but you can choose how you meet it. You can soften harsh judgment into honest assessment. You can guide your attention from spirals of fear back to the feeling of the blanket on your skin, the weight of your body, the rise and fall of your chest. Notice how even now, with your eyes closed, you can direct this inner landscape. You can decide to practice gentleness instead of self-attack. You can decide that this day was training, not a verdict. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which thoughts appear, linger, and pass away. Guard it fiercely. Guard your final moments of consciousness as if they set the tone for the night, because they do. And then there is everything that is no longer yours to manage. The conversation that already happened, the message you sent, the tone you used, the impression you left, the opinions forming in other minds, far from this room, the outcomes already set in motion by choices made hours, months, or years ago. You cannot reach backward through time and alter them. You cannot climb into another person's mind and rearrange their judgments. Psychologists call this narrative identity, the way you explain your life to yourself. Left unchecked, it keeps replaying the same scenes. The mistake at work, the argument with family, the moment you felt small. But replay is not control. Rumination does not rewrite the past. It only poisons the present. So here, at night, you practice a different kind of authorship. You choose which scenes to hold and which to let fall away. If you like, you can make this a quiet ritual. Bring to mind a worry. Ask gently, is there any action left tonight? If there is, note it. A message to send in the morning, a boundary to set, an apology to offer. Place that in the small circle of what you can control, and let your intention for tomorrow hold it. If there is no action, acknowledge that it belongs to the larger circle, the one ruled by time, chance, and other people. Breathe in, and on the exhale, imagine setting it down. You were never promised ease. You were promised a human life, with limits, with fatigue, with a body that needs rest. To honor those limits is not weakness, it is wisdom. When you return to yourself in this way, you give nature permission to restore you. Night is not for solving, night is for surrender. And as you learn this, we can move deeper into how you will meet tomorrow from a place of rested clarity, From this rested clarity, you can begin something gentle, not a plan to conquer tomorrow, a whisper about how you will move through it. There is a difference between harsh goals and soft intentions. Harsh goals speak in orders. Wake up at this time, achieve this result, fix this flaw. They measure, they compare, they threaten. Soft intentions speak in identity. I am learning to be patient. I am someone who returns to myself. I am practicing courage in small ways. One tries to force the river. The other learns to move with its nature. You have been taught to chase outcomes, to demand change from yourself the way the world demands performance. But the Stoics and the Taoists both point you somewhere quieter, to what you can control, to the character beneath the checklist, to the story beneath the schedule. So tonight, as your body grows heavier, choose one simple way you want to show up tomorrow. Not 10, not a complete reinvention. 1, perhaps, tomorrow I move a little slower and listen before I speak. Or, tomorrow I treat my body as a partner, not a machine. Or, tomorrow I meet each setback as training, not punishment. Which one feels true for you in this moment? Do not turn this into a demand. Think of it as a seed, a small, living thing you place in the soil of your mind before sleep. You are not ordering yourself to become different by force. You are creating a direction, a leaning, a quiet promise. Seeds do not grow because you shout at them. They grow because you give them the right conditions and time. This is the time to listen. Notice how your old inner voice wants to argue. You never follow through. You always fail. Nothing really changes. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these old lines appear and fade. Let it fall away, just for tonight. You are not here to rehearse failure. You are here to plant something new. Cognitive science tells us that the stories you repeat about yourself shape your emotions, your resilience, your choices. The Stoics knew this long before the research. Their evening reviews were not to punish themselves, but to gently rewrite the narrative. Here I stumbled. Here I learned. Here I will choose differently tomorrow. Every night, a small edit. Every morning, a slightly different character. So as you rest, say it softly to yourself. Tomorrow, I am someone who, and finish the sentence with your seed. Guard it fiercely, not with tension, but with quiet respect. When tomorrow comes, you will forget, and then remember, and then forget again. That is all right. Each remembrance is a watering. You were never promised ease, but you were given this power to choose the story you tell about who you are becoming. In the next moments, we will look more closely at those old stories and how to loosen their grip so this new seed has room to grow. So now the seed is planted, but a seed without water, without light, without small, steady care, does not become a tree. Your new story is the same. It cannot remain only as words in the mind. It must be lived, gently, in the smallest corners of your day. This is the time to listen for what is simple, not a grand reinvention, not a dramatic vow. Rather, micro-actions, tiny behaviors that line up with the person you are choosing to become. They are the bridge between the old narrative and the new one, between I wish and I am practicing. They are what you can control tonight and tomorrow and the day after that. A micro-action is small enough that you could do it even on a difficult day, even when you are tired, even when fear whispers that nothing will change. One honest conversation, one boundary spoken calmly, one act of self-respect that no one else may ever see. These are not gestures for applause. They are quiet votes for a different identity. Imagine you have carried the story. I am always the one who stays silent. A micro-action might be this. Tomorrow, you say one true sentence in a conversation, where you would usually nod and disappear. Just one. Or perhaps your story has been, I have no control over my time. Your action might be to protect 10 minutes for yourself, to sit, to breathe, to write a single line about your day, and to guard it fiercely. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which thoughts, stories, and old reflexes appear and fade. So let it fall away, this idea that only huge changes count. In cognitive science, they speak of narrative identity, of how repeated stories shape what you notice, how you feel, what you choose. Each small action is a new sentence added to that narrative, not a fantasy, but evidence. Choose actions that stretch you slightly, but do not tear you. If you dread them, they are too large. If you can do them without waking up at all, they are too small. You are looking for the gentle edge, where there is some resistance, some trembling, and yet also a sense of, yes, this is possible in this moment. Can you feel that edge in your own life right now? You were never promised ease, but you were given this, the ability to return to yourself through repetition. Tiny, almost invisible movements of courage, of honesty, of care. Over weeks and months, they carve new pathways. They turn, I am just this way, into, I am someone who practices. As you drift towards sleep, let one micro-action rise to the surface. Just one. Tomorrow, you will give it a body. Soon, we will look at how to review these days, so your new story is not only lived, but also seen, understood, and gently refined. That single action you chose is small. It may even feel insignificant, like a droplet lost in a vast ocean of habit and history. But in the Tao, it is never just a droplet. It is water meeting stone. Think of a river. It does not break the mountain in one heroic surge. It returns again and again, tracing the same path, touching the same edges, wearing down what seems immovable. This is how nature changes what resists it, not through sudden leaps, but through small, repeated movements that do not argue, do not hurry, do not lose themselves in fear. They simply continue. Your new story will be formed in the same way. The Tao moves in cycles, day into night, inhale into exhale, the turning of seasons, the rise and fall of moods and thoughts. You are not meant to transform in a single blazing moment and never look back. You are meant to move in circles that slowly widen, to return to yourself, again and again, each time with a little more clarity, a little more intention, a little less attachment to the old story that says, I never change. When you take one aligned breath, one kinder response, one honest sentence on a page, it may not feel like much. Yet from the perspective of nature, it is part of a pattern unfolding. You are tracing a new riverbed through your days. Tonight's intention, tomorrow's micro-action, the quiet review that follows. Together, they become a rhythm, a practice. You are not forcing change. You are cooperating with it. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these stories, these judgments, these old names arise and pass. The Taoist texts remind you that no role is final. No identity is fixed. Just as no wave can say, I am the ocean, no single thought can claim, I am who you are. Let it fall away. Let each small different action speak louder than the voice that insists you are the same. You do not need to feel different to live a slightly different story. This is important. Feelings will follow slowly. They move like seasons, not like switches. What you can control, even in the heaviest moment, is the next tiny gesture, the way you speak to yourself when you make a mistake, the way you pause before you repeat an old reaction, the way you choose one breath of patience in the middle of pain. You were never promised ease, only the dignity of choosing, and each choice, however small, is a vote for the person you are becoming, a drop of water on the stone. Soon, you will learn how to look back over these drops, to see the quiet channel they are carving. For now, this is the time to listen, to trust the cycle, and to prepare for the gentle art of review. Courage will be needed for that review, not the loud heroic kind, the quiet kind that moves, even while doubt is speaking. As you lie here, you can already hear the old narrator in your mind. It has opinions about you. It has a script. It tells you what you always do, what you never do, what you're allowed to hope for. When you reach for a new thought, a new habit, it tightens. It protests. This resistance is not proof that you are failing. It is proof that the old narrator is trying to keep its job. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which those thoughts appear, rise, and fall away. The Stoics would ask you to look at this inner voice the way you might look at a familiar actor on a stage. Recognizable, predictable, not sacred. When it says you cannot change, you will always be this way, you can meet it with a calm, simple reply. Perhaps, perhaps not. We will see what my actions say. The Stoics did not wait to feel courageous before acting with courage. They did not wait to feel disciplined before practicing discipline. They taught that your task is to act according to reason and values, not mood. Mood is weather. Values are climate. One shifts from hour to hour. The other is what you choose to establish, patiently, over time. So here's a phrase you can carry with you into tomorrow. I can act before I feel ready. Let it move through you now, with your breath. Inhale, I can act. Exhale, before I feel ready. This is not self-violence. It is self-leadership. It is choosing what you can control when fear and habit are loud. Imagine the old story saying, "You are bad with people. You always say the wrong thing." And still, you send one honest message. You ask one sincere question. Or the old story says, "You never finish anything." And still, you sit for 5 quiet minutes and write one true sentence about your day. These are small acts, almost invisible from the outside. But inside, something decisive is happening. Each time you act before the old story approves, you weaken its authority. You show your mind a new pattern. You turn hardship into training, not punishment. The narrator must adjust to the reality of your choices. It becomes less certain, less absolute, less able to command you with fear. This is the time to listen to a deeper narrator, the one aligned with nature, with clarity, with peace. It speaks softly. It asks, "What is in my control in this moment? What is the next honest step, however small?" Guard it fiercely, then let the rest fall away. Soon, you will learn how to track these quiet acts of courage, how to see them accumulate, night after night, into a different story. For now, feel the possibility of that ledger opening, waiting for your next small, deliberate mark. That ledger is your quiet companion. It does not shout. It does not argue with the old story. It simply records, with calm precision, the evidence of who you are becoming. Think of it as an evidence ledger for the person you are now choosing to be. Not a diary of complaints, not a catalog of fear or failure, a simple, living record of the moments when your actions matched your new story, when your choices reflected what you can control rather than what controls you. This is the time to listen to those moments. They are easy to overlook. Each evening, as the day loosens its grip, you will sit for a few breaths and look back. Not for long, not with harsh judgment, just enough to ask, where did I live as the new me today? Then you write down 1 to 3 small aligned actions. Only one if that is all you can see. Never more than 3. Clarity likes limits. Perhaps you spoke gently to yourself instead of repeating, I always fail. Perhaps you paused before reacting and chose silence over a sharp reply. Perhaps you went for a short walk when the old story said, why bother? These are not grand achievements. They are proof. They are the quiet marks in your ledger that say, I am practicing a different way of being. Cognitive science tells us that you remember your failures more vividly than your progress. The mind is drawn to pain, to threat, to what went wrong. It edits out the small victories. It forgets the moments of courage that did not feel dramatic. Without a ledger, the old narrative wins by default, because it is loud, familiar, and rehearsed. With a ledger, you place something firmer on the other side of the scale. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these stories rise and fall. The old script will still appear. I am broken. I never change. This is pointless. When it does, you will not argue with it. You will open your evidence ledger. You will read what you have written with your own hand. 10 nights of small honesty. 3 weeks of tiny acts of integrity. A month of choosing presence over escape. The story says you never change. The ledger says otherwise. On the nights when the old story feels especially loud, when fear tells you that nothing is different, this is where you return to yourself. You read slowly. You feel each entry as a real moment that happened in time, under real pressure, with real temptation to abandon yourself. You remember that you were never promised ease, only the chance to choose. This is not positive thinking. It is accurate seeing. It is a Taoist humility before your own nature. You are not trying to impress anyone. You are simply refusing to erase your own progress. Soon, you will learn how to speak to yourself from this evidence, how to let it reshape the very words you use about who you are. And even with all of this evidence, all of this quiet accuracy, you will still forget. You will still say the old words. You will still act from the old story. One sharp comment, one lonely evening, one tired morning, and suddenly, you are always like this again. Notice this now, so when it comes, you are not surprised. You were never promised ease. You were promised the chance to choose again. In any living process, there are slips. The Taoists point to the river for a reason. It does not flow in a perfect line. It bends, it slows, it pools in dark corners, then finds its way forward again. Your practice is the same. You will wander. You will remember. You will return to yourself. So when you fail your new story, this is the time to listen, not to the loudest voice of fear or shame, but to the simple facts of the moment. You can meet it with a clear, gentle sequence. First, notice. Second, name. Third, gently realign. That is all. To notice is to pause. You feel the familiar tightening in your chest, the old sentence forming in your mind. Of course I ruined it. I always do. Here, you stop. One breath, then another. You remember that you are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these old lines appear and dissolve. To name is to bring light. You might say, quietly inside, this is the old story of I always fail. This is habit, not truth. Cognitive psychology shows that simply labeling a pattern softens its grip, the way naming a fear makes it smaller, more human, less like fate. You are not arguing with yourself. You are recognizing what you can control. To gently realign is to turn, not to attack. You ask, what is one small action, right now, that belongs to the new story? Perhaps it is sending the message you were avoiding. Perhaps it is closing your eyes and feeling 3 full breaths. Perhaps it is apologizing without adding self-hatred. Small, specific, present. You let the rest fall away. The Stoics call this resilience. Not the hard, brittle kind, but the steady willingness to begin, again and again and again. The Taoists call it softness, the reed that bends in the wind and does not break. Together, they teach you that returning to yourself matters more than never leaving. Each return strengthens the path. Each quiet correction deepens the groove of your new narrative. Soon, we will turn to the exact words you can use in these moments, phrases that guard it fiercely, that protect your new story when it feels most fragile. Soon, we will turn to those words. But before the tongue speaks, the body has already answered. Your story is not only in your thoughts, it is in your shoulders, your jaw, your chest, the way you breathe when no one is watching. You are not your thoughts. And yet, the thoughts you repeat leave traces. They settle into posture, into tension, into habits of contraction and withdrawal. A story like, "I am too much," often lives as a tight throat. A story like, "I am not enough," often lives as a heavy chest or a collapsed spine. You say the words in your mind, but your muscles repeat them all day. This is the time to listen, not to the old narrative, but to the quiet signals beneath it. Gently, without forcing anything, allow your awareness to move down into your body. Notice where it lands first: your forehead, your eyes, the small muscles around them that have been holding on, perhaps for years. Let your attention rest there. Do not try to fix. Do not argue. Simply notice. Is there pressure, tightness, a dull ache? Name it softly in your mind. Tight, heavy, buzzing. When you name a sensation, you are already practicing what you can control. You are choosing to see clearly instead of turning away. Now, invite a slow breath. In through the nose, gentle and unhurried. Out through the mouth, as if you are exhaling a long-held sentence that no longer needs to be spoken. As you breathe out, imagine a small softening in that one area. Not total release, just 1 degree, 1 notch on the dial. You are the space in which this sensation appears. You are not the tension itself. You are the witness, the one who can say, "Here is fear in my chest. Here is shame in my stomach. Here is old pain in my jaw." When you meet it this way, you are already rewriting the story from "I am broken" to "something in me is hurting, and I can respond." Move your attention slowly, now, down the neck, across the shoulders, through the arms, the hands, the ribs, the belly, the hips. Wherever you notice a grip, pause, breathe. Name: tight, braced, numb. Let it be exactly as it is for this moment. Paradoxically, this gentle permission is what allows it to change. You were never promised ease. The body carries what the mind could not bear at the time. But tonight, you can return to yourself in a new way. Each breath and name is a small act of courage, a quiet refusal to abandon these hidden places. As the body softens, even slightly, the old narrative loses a little of its power. A clenched jaw that loosens says, "I do not have to fight this moment." A chest that expands says, "I am allowed to exist." This is how the grip of the story begins to let it fall away, not through force, but through repeated, embodied kindness. In a moment, we will give your mind clear phrases to match this softening, new sentences that guard it fiercely, that protect this tenderness as it unfolds. And yet, even the most careful words can only go so far. There is another medicine the old stories fear: silence. Silence is where the script forgets its lines. In the absence of constant narration, the character you have been playing does not quite know what to do, and for a brief, clean moment, the whole performance wavers. This is not an empty void. It is a clear sky, after a storm, the air still humming with what is past, but open. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which they appear, change, and dissolve. So you practice something simple. Several times a day, you take a short pause. No phone, no music, no input. You let your eyes rest on a single point, or close them. You feel one breath, then another. You are not here to solve anything. You are here to stop feeding the noise. You are here to return to yourself. At first, the old story will shout to fill the gap. It will replay scenes, repeat old accusations, offer you familiar fear and familiar pain. Let it speak without answering. Do not argue. Do not explain. Let it rise, crest, and fall like a wave on stone. This is the time to listen, but you are listening for something beneath the words, beneath the rehearsed explanations of who you are supposed to be. Notice what remains when no story is being told. A quiet awareness, a sense of simple being, the feel of your hands, the rhythm of your breath, the slight movement of your chest with each inhale and exhale. There is a basic okayness here, even if life is not easy, even if you were never promised ease. In this bare presence, nothing is demanded of you. You do not have to perform your identity. You just exist. Cognitive science calls this stepping back from narrative identity. Stoics and Taoists knew it without the term. When Marcus reviewed his day, he was not just judging actions. He was loosening the grip of the story that said, "This is who I am, and I cannot change." When Taoist sages sat in silence, they were not escaping life. They were returning to their original nature, before labels, before roles. You can do the same in 10 quiet seconds, in a line at the store, before you open a difficult message, after you close a door. 10 seconds where you withdraw your attention from the tale of failure or triumph and rest it in the body, in the breath, in the simple fact of being here now. Guard it fiercely, this small interval of peace. Let it fall away, this need to keep narrating, explaining, defending, because in the next part, we will take this silence, these new phrases, and weave them into a daily rhythm you can actually live, moment by moment, choice by choice, story by story. Now we begin to weave all of this into a day you can actually live, not an ideal day in some future version of your life, but this day, in this body, with this breath. Think of your morning as a soft doorway, before the scroll, before the rush, before the old story can fully wake up. You pause, you remember your seed, that small, clear sentence about who you are becoming. I am learning to meet myself with honesty. I am practicing courage in small ways. You let it sit on your tongue, in your chest, in your breath. This is the time to listen, not to the noise of fear, but to the quiet intention underneath it. You do not need an hour. You need a moment of truth. 3 slow breaths. 1 question. What is in my control today? Your judgments, your effort, your willingness to return to yourself. That is enough. You are not your thoughts about the day. You are the space in which those thoughts appear and pass. Then the day begins to move. Emails, traffic, conversations, demands. Here is where the story is usually written on autopilot. Instead, you will write it in micro-actions. A single honest reply, where you used to hide, standing a little taller, when you would have shrunk, speaking more gently to yourself after a mistake. These are not dramatic scenes. They are small edits made in real time. Can you pair these micro-actions with tiny pauses of silence? 1 breath before you answer a message. One breath before you check the news. One breath when irritation flares, when pain tightens your chest, when an old label tries to pull you back. This is mind training in motion. You notice the old story, you feel the pull, and you choose one different word, one different gesture. That is how identity changes, moment by moment, choice by choice. You were never promised ease. The day will not suddenly become soft because you are practicing, but hardship becomes training, not punishment. Each challenge becomes a chance to remember what you can control and let it fall away. This need to manage everything else. And then the evening comes. Here, you gather the day into your hands. You sit, even for 5 minutes, and you review. Where did I live my new story? Where did I fall back into the old? You write your evidence ledger, not as a trial, but as a record of growth. One line for a moment of alignment. One line for a moment you will handle differently next time. You release the rest into the night. You are not here to perfect yourself before you sleep. You are here to practice, to forgive, to begin again. This rhythm is not a cage. It is a gentle frame around your freedom. Bend it when you must. Miss a day and return without drama. In the next part, we will deepen this frame and show you how to adapt it when life becomes heavier than you expected. And as that frame settles around you, like a soft outline in the dark, you can begin to see something else. You can begin to see the story that has been moving quietly underneath this whole practice, the way a river moves beneath a thin layer of ice. Look back, gently, over this night, not as a critic but as a witness. You notice the old phrases you use about yourself, the inherited lines from family, from culture, from past pain. You saw how often your mind repeats, I am this, I am not that. And for a few breaths, you stepped back. You saw that you are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these thoughts appear, linger, and fade. That is not a small thing. Cognitive science calls this your narrative identity, the story you tell about who you are, what you deserve, what is possible for you. The Stoics and the Taoists reach the same insight in different language. Stories are patterns, not prisons. They are habits of interpretation, not chains around your nature. When you see them, you can soften them. When you soften them, you can rewrite them. Think of the practices you have already touched tonight. You trace the old, inherited narratives. I always fail. I am too much. I am not enough. You pause to witness the stream of thought instead of drowning in it. You began to reframe harsh self-talk into something more honest and kind. I struggled today, and I am learning. You return to what you can control in this moment. Your breath, your attention, your next small choice. This is how water shapes stone, not with one heroic surge, but with patient, repeated contact. Change in your self-story often feels this quiet. No fireworks, no sudden new identity, just a little more space around the old sentences, a little less fear when they arrive, a little more peace in how you respond. Can you sense that, even now? You may not be able to name the shift. You may still feel the pull of the old narrative. Yet something in you has already moved. You have seen your story a little more clearly. You have questioned what once felt unquestionable. You have allowed a crack of clarity into a place that used to be sealed. Let yourself feel a gentle pride in that. You stayed, even if your mind wandered, even if resistance rose, or boredom, or doubt. You kept returning. This is the time to listen to that steadiness in you. Guard it fiercely, not with tension, but with respect. It is the beginning of a different way of living with yourself. Imagine your identity now as a river under an open sky. The water flows, bends, changes speed. Clouds pass overhead, casting shifting shadows. None of it is fixed. You were never promised ease, and yet, within this movement, there can be great peace. You do not have to hold yourself so tightly. You can let it fall away. This need to be one rigid thing. From here, our work becomes very simple, not heavy, not grand, just a clear, repeatable way to meet yourself tomorrow and the next day without pressure or perfectionism. In the next part, we will gather this into a small daily practice so that the story that has already begun to shift can keep unfolding, one honest moment at a time. So let us make it simple, very small, so small that your resistance has nothing to push against. You are not here to build a perfect routine. You are here to build a gentle thread you can follow back to yourself, night after night, until it feels natural to return to yourself without effort. Think of this as a daily ritual that takes only a few minutes, not a performance, not a test, just a brief meeting with your own mind. You were never promised ease, but you can choose simplicity. In a world that pulls you outward all day, this is the time to listen inward, to remember what you can control and what you can let fall away. The structure is very plain. First, you pause and breathe. Then, you notice the story that feels loud. Finally, you offer it a kinder, truer shape. 3 movements. 1 quiet arc. If you like, imagine tonight. You sit or lie down comfortably, shoulders soft, jaw unclenched, phone face down, or in another room. You feel the breath move in and you feel the breath move out. Slow, unforced. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which thoughts rise and fade like mist over water. After a minute or two, you ask, silently, what story about myself feels loud right now? You do not dig or strain. You allow the first clear sentence to appear. I always fail. I am behind everyone. No one really cares about me. Whatever comes is welcome. This is not confession. It is observation. Then you reach for a notebook or a notes app, and you write 1 or 2 sentences, exactly as they appear in your mind. No editing, no fixing. You are only recording weather. This is your practice of clarity, seeing the inner climate without judgment, with the same calm attention you might give to clouds passing across the evening sky. Now, the soft rewrite. You look at what you wrote and ask, if a dear friend said this to me, what would I say back? You answer in 1 new sentence. You don't always fail, you are learning slowly. You are not behind, you are on your path. Let that sentence become the new story for this moment, not a forced positive spin, but a more spacious truth. Here the Stoic and the Taoist meet. The Stoic in you asks, what is in my control? My response, my next small action, the tone of my inner voice. The Taoist in you loosens its grip, lets the old story soften, trusts that nature moves in cycles and that identity can flow. You will miss days. You will forget. That too becomes part of the story. What matters is not perfection. What matters is that you know the way back, and that tomorrow or the next night, you can sit again, breathe again, and begin again. In the next section, we will take this further, turning these rewritten sentences into tiny actions, so that your new story is not only written, but lived in the smallest details of your day. So now the question becomes simple and very real. How does this new story walk through an ordinary day? A story does not become true just because you think it. It becomes true because you return to it again and again, in the smallest choices, in the quietest moments when no one is watching. This is the time to listen, not to the old chorus of fear and habit, but to a gentler sentence you are willing to live. Choose one, only one, not grand, not heroic, not perfect. Something believable, human, soft around the edges. I am learning to be kinder to myself. I can respond instead of react. I am allowed to begin again. Which one feels close enough that your body does not tense in resistance but loosens, just a little, in recognition? Once you have this sentence, you do not need to carve it into stone. You only need to ask, once a day, what is one small action that matches this? 1, not 10. The bar is low on purpose. Low so that you can step over it even when you are tired, even when pain is present, even when the old story is loud. You receive a difficult message and feel heat rise in your chest. Instead of firing back, you pause. You take one slow breath, then another, then a third, and you read it again. That pause is you living a new story. Or self-criticism spikes as you remember something you said. You feel the familiar wave of shame begin to build. You are not your thoughts. In that moment, you place a hand on your chest, breathe, and say quietly, I am learning. That touches you, living a new story. At night, before sleep, the mind reaches for what went wrong. You meet that pull with a simple practice. You name one thing you did well today, however small. I answered with patience. I kept my promise. I rested when I needed rest. That naming is you living a new story. The Stoics knew this. For them, virtue was not an idea, but a habit of tiny, repeatable acts. You do not need to control the whole arc of your life. You only need to control the next step that is truly yours. The next word, the next breath, the next response. That is what you can control. Guard it fiercely. The Taoist would say, do not force it. Move with the grain of your nature. Let each action feel like a gentle alignment, not a performance for some invisible judge. If a step feels harsh, strained, unreal, let it fall away. Wait for the smaller, truer movement that asks less effort and more honesty. And when you slip, when the old chapters rush back and you act from them, remember, they are familiar pages, not the whole book. You are the space in which all these stories rise and fade. You were never promised ease, only the freedom to begin again. So tomorrow, as you live one small aligned action, say silently, this is me, living a new story. Let that sentence sink into you. In the next section, you will see how these small acts, repeated, begin to reshape not only your days, but the person you believe yourself to be. And the person you believe yourself to be is still in motion. Your story is not finished. This is not a final answer, not a neat conclusion, but a turning point. A quiet decision made in the dark or in the early light to relate to yourself differently from now on. Nothing outside you needs to change for this to be real. The shift happens in the way you speak to yourself, in the next small moment. Remember this as you move forward. The harshest stories you have carried, the ones that say you are broken, behind, too much, or not enough, are still only stories. They may rise, they may pull at your breath, they may flood the mind with old fear, but you are not your thoughts. You are the space in which these patterns appear and fade. Cognitive science calls this narrative identity. Tao and Stoic practice call it illusion, habit, attachment. Different words for the same truth. The tale is not the teller. When an old sentence appears, you do not have to wrestle it or prove it wrong. You can simply see it, name it as a story, and let it fall away. This is the time to listen. Not to the loudest voice of self-judgment, but to the quieter sense of what is true right now. You can always return to yourself. You can return to your breath, to the simple feel of your body, resting, to what you can control in this one point in time. Your attention, your response, your next choice of words toward your own heart. You are leaving this session with tools you did not have in the same way before. the ability to notice a narrative as a narrative, the skill of softening the inner voice by one degree, then another, the image of letting the day flow back to the river so you do not hold every mistake as a permanent mark, the practice of one aligned action at a time so change becomes lived, not forced. Perhaps, months from now, you will look back at this night or this morning. You may not remember every phrase, but you might remember the feeling of turning gently toward yourself instead of away. Can you imagine your future self, a little steadier, a little freer, whispering thank you for beginning, even when it felt small, uncertain, almost invisible? As you drift toward sleep or rise to meet the day, you do not need a complex plan. Hold one simple phrase like a lantern in your hands. I am allowed to become someone new, one moment at a time. Guard it fiercely. Return to it when the old stories grow loud. My wish for you is simple, that you move through the world with a little more spaciousness, a little more kindness, and a clearer sense of what you can control and what you can release. That you walk your path without rushing, trusting that the next chapter will unfold as you keep listening inward. The audio will end. Your practice continues.